Chapter 51. New term, new surprises. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After bidding farewell to a crying Astoria, Axel and Daphne began walking along the platform, looking for a less crowded place to board the train. "Oh, by the way, congratulations for the exams," said Daphne, her cheeks still flushed for some reason. "Oh. Thanks," replied Axel, not at all concerned about the results. "I must have passed," he muttered. "That's all that matters." "Passed." Daphne shook her head in exasperation. "Mr. Caveman, you did more than just that," she said in annoyance, showing him the results that seemed to have been posted on Hogwarts forums. "Damn," muttered Axel, looking at the results. Looks like he overdid it a bit. Since he had quit his studies years ago, he had no idea how good he'll have to do to get average ranking. Turns out, he had managed to get the highest scores in dueling, history of magic, and charms. Rose was at the top in transfiguration and flying, while Daphne had the highest in herbology and potions. Top of the class in 3 subjects. "You were the dark horse this year," said Daphne, shaking her head in wonder as she looked at the scores. The curious students who had checked the girl who lives results were surprised to see someone else getting the top marks in 3 subjects. Though it was understandable, since even Daphne herself was surprised. She had never seen him ever studying any course material. Heck, even all of his homework was done by her. Thus, the forums had blown up with discussion, with everyone expressing their surprise and curiosity over the news. Bye. Waving a final goodbye, Daphne boarded the train with Axel. As Axel looked at the students clamoring around in the Hogwarts Express, he couldn't help but notice that something seemed different than the last time he was here. For one, it was a lot more noisy than it was the last time. What's all the hubbub about? Why does the atmosphere seem so different from last year? He asked Daphne as they searched for a compartment. Daphne, who was looking quite excited herself, looked at him in confusion. Duh, of course they'd be different. This year has so many different things happening. Lockhart aside, I think we're going to learn a lot this year from the exchange program. Oh. Muttered Axel with a nod. Wait. Said Daphne, looking at him in resignation. You have no idea what I'm talking about, do you? Nope, said Axel, getting into an empty compartment followed by Daphne. Alright, Mr. Caveman. I'll tell you, she said, shutting the door. I don't think you'll be interested in other things. But the exchange program is something I think you'll like. Axel raised an eyebrow, really? Daphne nodded excitedly, yep, we're having an exchange program with another magical school. They're sending some of their students and teachers here to study and learn about our magical practices while also teaching us about theirs. There's even going to be a few friendly competitions as well, so everyone is just too eager to earn fame and prove Hogwarts superiority. Axel nodded in understanding. Well, that would explain all the excitement, he muttered, looking at the students clamoring about through their compartment door. Daphne shook her head with a sigh at his lack of awareness. Not all of it. Seriously, do you have no one to talk to? And why the fuck could I not contact you over the summer? Axel shrugged as he took out his Magi.mirror and turned it on again. I was busy. He had turned it off 2 months ago when he was making his life-saving potion, and he hadn't turned it on ever since. As for the owls, that was another matter altogether. What about the owls? Why couldn't they reach you? She asked. Well, I just blocked them. Daphne didn't seem to understand. Wait, that's possible as well. Of course it is. If it wasn't, then there won't be any criminal on the run. All you'd have to do is write a letter to the criminal and follow the owl, he said, making Daphne have an enlightened look on her face. Fuck. I'd make a terrible criminal, won't I? She asked. Axel shrugged. Well, it's not exactly common knowledge either. At least for the common people. Criminals need to have this knowledge. So he had also found out about it through the system. Though, I wonder how the owls detect us, said Daphne thoughtfully. Axel also didn't know the answer. System. Can you tell me? Affirmative. The magical owls, though now used throughout the world, are a species which originated from Britain, from an owl which was Merlin's familiar. All of this owl's descendants are able to inherit its gift of sight, an ability that essentially allows them to find any person just by knowing their name. This is how the species of magical owls came to be. Oh, you're here. While Axel was listening to the system, their compartment door was slid open as Susan Bones invited herself in, followed by the rest of the Golden Gang. Look. That's her. Yeah. The girl, who played. Yeah man. I heard she might get scouted for a league team. She beat the Slytherins. Students were quick to recognize her with her increasing fame. Rose quickly shut the door as soon as all the gang was in. Upon having the peaceful atmosphere destroyed, Axel realized a bit too late that he should have drawn the blinds in the beginning. But Daphne seemed all too happy upon meeting her friends. After Daphne hugged all of them, they finally noticed Axel, who was not too happy with their arrival, as he lowered his presence and Wodera if he should leave or not let them come in. After all, he didn't get along well with them. But, since they were Daphne's friends, he decided to just let it be. Hannah, who was the first one to notice him, let out a squeak as she hid behind Rose. Rose also jumped in surprise when she saw him. Rose was having a great time since she was enjoying all the fame she was getting for something she did instead of the usual girl who lived bullshit. But seeing Axel just soured her mood. She already hated him for various reasons, but he had given her 2 more reasons to hate him over the summer. First of all, when Daphne was injured last time, he didn't even come to visit. The poor girl seemed so sad during that time. And then she got even more annoyed when she saw the results. This guy had somehow managed to beat her in 3 subjects. Rose wouldn't have minded if it was someone else, but why did it have to be him? Axel shrugged. Yeah, me. Is that a problem? He still hadn't forgotten that this girl had tried to bully him using her fame in the beginning of last year. Now that he was healed, he had a score to settle with her. Axel. Our topper is here. Exclaimed Susan, taking a closer look at him. Blimey. Have you become more handsome? She asked, destroying the hostile atmosphere. Rose scoffed. Cheater, she muttered, before settling down. Daphne frowned. Rose, what is your problem with him? While she and Rose were great friends, she wouldn't just sit by if she behaved so unreasonably. This wasn't even the first time she was witnessing Rose being hostile to Axel for no reason. Rose looked at Daphne in surprise. You too? So even you are going to take his side now? Did you forget that you did all of his homework last year? And what did he do in return? He didn't even come to see you while you were attacked by a freaking Lethifold. Seriously, what kind of dark magic does he trap everyone in? She questioned. It's obvious that he cheated. How many times have you seen him in the library? I never did, I didn't either. Added Neville. Rose ignored him as she kept her attention on Daphne. And don't tell me you didn't do all of his homework, because I know you did. She ranted. Axel slowly stood up as he towered over Rose, making her take a step back unconsciously. He looked down at Rose, still looking quite calm. Even if I cheated, what can you do about it? Just be grateful I left out some things for you, he said dismissively. His favorability of her was dropping to dangerous levels. If she didn't stop being so annoying, she might have to suffer. I should have left earlier, he thought as he turned to leave. He didn't want to actively antagonize these kids since they were Daphne's friends. Rose didn't say anything as she looked to the side, seemingly cowed. But Neville seemed to have grown a backbone. Why you are saying you left them for Rose to win? Like you can do better than Rose at those things with that crippled body? He asked, looking at Axel's hands which were still in his pockets out of habit. While Neville was nervous as he said that, he still knew that his father would be proud seeing him standing up for Rose. Hannah gasped in horror while Susan aimed a kick at Neville's shin, making him yelp in pain. Meanwhile, Daphne looked at Neville coldly. These two Gryffindors would piss their pants if they knew Axel was already healed. Axel just gave a smile that was not a smile. If he had still been crippled, he might have taken offense, but as it was, the situation seemed quite amusing to him. He cast a disdainful look at Neville. "Simp," he muttered in disgust as he left the compartment. At this moment, Neville Longbottom wasn't worthy enough to get his attention. Ouch! A stinging hex struck Neville on his fat bottom. What was that for? He asked in indignation, his eyes watering from the pain as he looked back at Daphne. Daphne looked at him expressionlessly. "You're lucky that's all you got. Keep your stupid mouth shut in front of him from next time," she told him coldly before she also left the compartment. The four friends looked at the departing girl in shock. "She must have been really pissed," commented Susan, and no one disagreed. "Because, the way she just spoke and that expression, that was exactly the old Daphne before her father's death, the Ice Princess." Axel walked out of the compartment to search for another compartment. The train's horn sounded, causing him infinite irritation due to his misophonia. The sound meant the train was ready for departure, which meant that all the compartments should be filled by now. Seriously, if they weren't Daphne's friends he'd have kicked them out instead of leaving himself, but he figured she'd like to hang out with her childhood friends more than him. He couldn't have lowered his presence further either, or Daphne would know about his ability, and his stealth abilities must remain absolutely secret. In the end, leaving by himself was the best option. As he walked through the corridor, looking into different compartments, another pair of footsteps joined him in his search. Axel turned to look at Daphne in puzzlement. "Noel.n, why are you here?" Daphne shrugged. "Need you even ask? I'd rather be with you." "If that's okay with you," she added. Axel once again began to look for compartments. Though this time, the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. "Doesn't look like there's any empty compartment left. And those with space would have annoying people inside," observed Daphne as they walked. She had other friends, but Axel wouldn't like them one bit. Axel stopped in front of a particular compartment that everyone was purposefully avoiding. "This would have to do for today," he muttered. Daphne followed his gaze and froze for a moment as she saw Martina Valentino. Martina wasn't alone though. There were also Hermione Granger and another cute girl with dirty blonde hair. "Wait. But you said you didn't have any relation with her." Axel frowned. "I didn't at the time. Though we're on friendly terms now." "Why do you ask? When did that happen?" Axel accepting they are on friendly terms is equivalent to being bosom buddies for normal people. "That can't be possible, right?" Without giving her much time to think, Axel opened Martina's compartment door as he entered. "Sup, Axel." Martina stood up in pleasant surprise. "You've changed so much," she muttered, observing him. "Yeah, that I have," Axel agreed, taking a seat. Martina then turned to Daphne as she smiled, "Heiress Greengrass. It's good to see you again," she said politely. Daphne returned the courtesy. "Likewise, Princess Valentino," she said stiffly, still quite surprised at Axel, who had casually entered without any knocking and sat down like he owned the compartment. Looking at the two girls, Axel frowned. What was up with these two? Why are they suddenly pretending to be all prim and proper? He wondered. Daphne usually curses like a gangster and purposefully ignores most of the rules. While Martina. He'd seen her scream like a little girl in front of a Dementor, act like a little girl in front of her parents, and fall like a little girl right in front of him. Both have pretty much forgotten formalities in front of him, so he found their act quite annoying. "You surprisingly don't have a single Raxpert infesting you. This train has lots of people who have loads," came a dreamy voice, distracting him. Axel turned his head to look at the small girl with dirty blonde hair who'd been here. "What did you say?" Martina coughed. "Axel, meet my new friend, Luna Lovegood. She is a bit eccentric, so you might not understand whatever she says," she told him as she turned to Luna. "Luna, this is Axel Hunt and this is Daphne Greengrass." Luna nodded. "You're Axel Hunt?" she asked, looking at Axel with interest. "I've never seen you," she revealed. After that, she turned to Daphne. "Nice to meet you," Axel agreed with Martina's words. Yep, this girl was eccentric all right. The rest of the train ride was peaceful. Martina and Daphne were still formal to each other and Axel had just decided to focus on continuing with his training. Legilimency Stage 1 Progress. 20%, yep, after reaching the first stage of occlumency, he'd unlocked legilimency, the art of entering someone's mind. He finds this skill really useful, hence he's been investing a lot of time in mastering it. They took the carriages to Hogwarts while Luna followed Hagrid to take the boats. As he went to sit at the familiar Slytherin table in the Great Hall, he saw that the students who'd always turned away from him were now looking at him invitingly. Feeling weirded out, Axel ignored them as he went to sit at his staple corner seat. He looked at Draco, expecting to see the boy to come at him any time, but Axel found him sitting properly like a good little boy, trying to make polite conversation. Axel shrugged. He then looked at the professor's table and frowned as he couldn't find the professor he was looking for. Axel furrowed his brows in confusion. But since it was time for sorting, he sealed his ears for the ceremony as he resumed his legilimency training. By the time the sorting was over and he unsealed his ears, he had a girl sitting beside him, looking at him curiously with her half-asleep dreamy eyes. "This place is infested with Raxperts, but you don't have any." "I was curious," she informed him as she looked around at the other Slytherin students. He looked at the girl whom Martina seemed to like very much and then looked at Martina who was already looking in his direction with a worried gaze. Axel sighed as he began taking out his food to eat. It would seem that another declaration on the forums from the Mafia Princess was in order. He better not bully this little girl. "Why are you eating that?" asked the girl. Luna seems to be her name. Axel began eating his extremely unsavory and expensive meal consistent of precious materials. "Because it makes me strong." Luna surveyed him as she pressed his bicep, which was as hard as rock. "You are indeed strong, but did you wash the ingredients properly? Daddy once wrote an article on the cicaceps on terminite root." Axel paused. She had at least recognized one of the ingredients correctly. The girl didn't stop talking to him the whole dinner until Dumbledore finally stood up, making Axel relieved. Dumbledore spread his hands wide in his classic gesture. "Welcome, my dear students, to another year at Hogwarts." Applause, but this year is going to be especially thrilling, informative and invigorating for us. Because this year, Hogwarts is holding an exchange program. Cheers. Dumbledore raised his hand, silencing the crowd. Now, some of you might be wondering, which school is coming? And why specifically that school? All of your doubts will be cleared momentarily, but I have a few other announcements to make first, he said, making the students disappointed. First of all, let us welcome our new defense against the dark arts professor, Mrs. Narcissa Malfoy Black, who has graciously offered to teach the students in Professor Umbridge's absence. There was a loud cheer for Mrs. Malfoy, and few whistles from the older students as well for the beautiful woman. But Professor Narcissa didn't seem affected. And for the next announcement, with a heavy heart I have to announce that Professor Jakub Gorski has had to leave due to an emergency. There was a collective protest and lamentation at that news as no one seemed to be happy with that news. And the most depressed one was, of course, Axel. Fuck, there goes Plan B, he cursed. Of course, his Plan B to find out about the organization was to simply ask Gorski about it. For obvious reasons, it hadn't been his first choice since he'd have to risk revealing that he knew about the organization and that Jakub was a member. And he especially didn't want to forcefully take out the information. But nevertheless, it was an easier alternative than the last plan. Now, he only has Plan C left. This plan was the easiest of the three plans, but also the most dangerous. Since he can't find the organization, why not let the organization find him? Since even Gorsky had already warned him that the organization would come after him once they see his name and appearance, he just has to spread his name far and wide enough that the organization would find out about him. And when they come, he'll be waiting. Risky. Yes, it was fucking risky. But Axel looked at the huge amount of SP that he had gotten after stealing the fake Philosopher's Stone and the System Shop interface. When they come, he'll be waiting, prepared. AN Power Stones. There were 2 polls after this chapter on Patreon. Go check them out, I'll made them public. One of the votes was on which school you want it to be. Another one is concerning Luna. The title is, How Would You Prefer Your Luna? The exchange program. Come read ahead and support me on Patreon. Patreon.com/snollygostervote. Chapter 52. The exchange program. You are listening at novelfull.audio. While Axel was busy in his thoughts, Dumbledore had arrived at the main topic. And now, on to the main topic you've all been waiting for, the exchange program, he said, and the hall quietened down as everyone now paid more attention. There were hushed conversations as the students seemed to speculate who it was going to be. Axel even heard some of them placing bets. 10 Galleons says it's Livermorny. They have some really cool subjects. You're on. They have too many mudbloods in M. I bet it would be Coatscorviz. They teach you dark magic as well. Shut up mate, it would be. Dumbledore smiled. I know there has been a great deal excitement of speculation and even votes on the forums on who the school might be, since we had to keep it under wraps in case there was a change in plans. But now, it has been confirmed. The school that is going to be coming for the exchange program is, Mahudakoro School of Ninshu and Jutsu. Axel closed his ears in annoyance as the crowd loudly cheered while some also expressed their disappointment over the news. Dumbledore waited for a few moments for everyone to quieten before he spoke again. Now, since the school has remained relatively closed off in the past, I suppose a brief overview of the school is in order. Mahudakoro is one of the best schools of magic in Japan. But, in terms of its education, it is quite different compared to Hogwarts. Hogwarts trains wizards while Mahudakoro trains ninjas. While Hogwarts focuses on spell casting, charms, hexes, transfiguration, enchanting, etc., Mahudakoro is more oriented towards training their students in combat, physical and elemental magic, and other skills. The ninjas trained from Mahudakoro are becoming increasingly popular as they are hired for various jobs and are really skilled at what they do. They have their own unique way of spell casting which is quite interesting but also equally difficult to use. And the education they receive is vastly differs from ours. Overall, both the schools have a lot to learn from each other and I hope we can get along with our foreign friends. There was a round of applause after which Dumbledore spoke once again. While they're here, the schools are going to have a few friendly competitions in a few common fields so that the students can learn from each other. And let me assure you, our deputy headmistress would not be pleased if you showed unsightly behavior, he said, looking at McGonagall who gave the students a stern look. And neither will I. Dumbledore added as the air around him turned serious. This is the first time in many years that a cross-continental cooperation between schools of different cultures is being organized without any prior relations and precedents. The magical schools and governments from all over the world will be paying attention to it. If it ends with positive results, we might be opening up the doors to the cooperation and exchange between all major magical schools in the world. So, I sincerely hope you will conduct yourselves like a student worthy of Hogwarts' reputation and bring honor to our school, he said, his words unconsciously making everyone straighten up. After, he began to go over miscellaneous stuff like the increased security and stuff, but Axel was just too busy thinking about ways to attract the organization's attention to listen to anything. He had almost 0 to nil information on them, so he didn't know just how he could attract their attention. He can't just advertise the fact that he has this cross-shaped pendant that the organization is looking for, can he? Nope, that's just not the right way. Even if he wants them to come after him, he doesn't want them to know that he actually has the pendant. It seems like the only way to attract their attention is to show his face to more people. Just like Gorsky, surely someone else from the organization must also recognize his face and compare it to his father, right? But the question is, how? No one knows him outside Hogwarts. Until now, Axel has always focused on ways to draw the least attention, not the most attention. It was quite a bummer to him when he had still attracted a lot of attention at Hogwarts despite not wanting to. Speaking of which, the thing which got him famous at Hogwarts was that scandal with Martina. Does he have to repeat something like that again? Axel sighed. Just the thought of that is making Plan D much more appealing. Plan D, yes, he had a Plan D. But it was so bad that he didn't even consider it until now. It's just that, Bellatrix Black knew his dad. So he thought, would she also know about the organization? But obviously, this was a very bad idea. After the students were dismissed, as Axel exited the Great Hall, someone called his name. Axel. Axel turned around to see Martina making her way over to him in a hurry, the crowd breaking out into hushed whispers as they looked at the two of them. What is it? Martina had a pleading look on her face as she looked at him. Could I talk to you for a moment? She asked, gesturing towards a broom closet. Axel frowned. This is quite an unreasonable request, but since she was quite accommodating to him and Daphne at the train ride, he didn't want to reject it. All right, but make it quick, he ordered as he followed her, not realizing that the crowd had gone bonkers behind him seeing the two of them going into a broom closet. Yep, his social skills were lacking. What did you want to talk about? He asked as he entered the broom closet after her and closed the door, making everything go dark. Martina, who wasn't prepared for the unexpected darkness inside, tripped due to a bucket. Ah! Damn it! Martina quickly got up and pulled her skirt back down. It was so dark, he shouldn't have been able to see anything, right? Only Axel, who could see perfectly, sighed. Have you got some kind of split personality? He asked the girl. This was what? The third time she fell in front of him. Maybe fourth. He couldn't compare this awkward girl with the calm and composed girl who acts like a dignified princess in front of others. And, what's her deal with the color purple? Meanwhile, the students outside were beyond surprised to hear the noise followed by Martina's moan. Are they, really going at it? Damn, that guy, with Martina Valentino. Inside, Martina used diplomacy to calm down. He didn't see anything that he didn't see anything. Under different circumstances, she wouldn't have been able to recover so quickly, but right now she wanted to talk about serious stuff. Taking out her wand, she quickly lit up the room and put some privacy charms after which she finally turned to face him in the dim lighting. I'm sorry, again, for my ungainliness. But I wanted to talk to you about something important, she said, her face slightly flushed due to yet another embarrassing moment in front of him. Go on. Martina looked at him with concern. I just wanted to ask, has anyone tried to bother or bully you after my warning? Axel tilted his head, no. I was just attacked once because some asshole was too jealous, he said with a shrug. Martina looked shocked. Really? Who was it? She asked, outraged as the things inside the cupboard started to shake. Axel thought about it. His revenge wasn't done yet, not by a long shot, and he didn't want to be suspicious when bad things happened to those assholes. So, he just shook his head. No need, none of the Slytherins can touch me. Is that all you wanted to ask? Martina looked at him, slightly astonished. Was this the same boy whom she saw limping through the corridors while shaking non-stop on the very first day? But now that she looked at him again, she was surprised just how much he had changed. He was now as tall as her, and his whole being seemed to radiate power and danger. She recalled how he had handled the troll and dementors and how he had handled her brother. Yeah, if it's this guy, the Slytherins need to be the one to worry. But. Martina sighed. No, there's something else, she revealed. She had never expected that Luna would get sorted into Slytherin. Just like Hermione, Luna was a beloved character from canon and she had decided to not let the poor girl be bullied like she was in the canon. But. Now that she was sorted into Slytherin, it's like throwing a sheep to a den of wolves. That's why, she was here to ask for Axel's help, the only good Slytherin she knows. It's about Luna. She is slightly different from the normal girls. And I'm afraid she'll be bullied in the dorms. So, could you please look out for her? I just need you to inform me if you see her getting bullied, said Martina with a pleading look. Axel looked at her in puzzlement. Are you two related or something? No. Then why are you going out of your way to help her? In his case, it was understandable since it was her fault he was in trouble. But why is she helping Luna? Martina paused as a nostalgic look flashed on her face. I just feel like I've known her from my previous life, she said half-truthfully. Axel gave her a weird glance. This seems quite a drag. But then, his hand went to his pocket where he kept the knife she gave. It was the first Christmas gift he'd gotten. He still hadn't given her anything in return for this thing. After all, what could he give her that she can't get by herself with just a word? Thus, Axel sighed. Whatever, I'll try. Martina was so happy that she hugged Axel. Thanks. It's not a big deal. Axel had an uncomfortable look on his face as he slowly pushed her away. Today is turning out to be a peculiar day. This is the third time he's being thanked like this. His guard is lowering itself while his mind is thinking of weird things, like how easy it would be for these girls to stab him in the back while they're hugging him. Later, while sitting in office, Dumbledore pondered over various thoughts while looking through the various policies spread out in front of him. The time for war is drawing nearer as the forces of the enemy are making their moves in the dark. Thus, he can't afford to be passive either. The danger this time will not only threaten Britain, but the whole world. It is not only Voldemort they need to be worried about. It's a complete dimension. Yes, the boundaries between the worlds are somehow loosening, so if someone didn't prevent it, there is fair chance that the creatures from Netherworld might invade Earth. And that can be apocalyptic. Netherworld's threat can be imagined just by the fact that the magical creatures on Earth didn't originate from here, but the other two worlds. And over time, their bloodlines diluted and their powers weakened through the generations while they stayed on Earth. The tales and myths of legendary magical dragons didn't originate from Earth, but from the other two worlds. So, all Dumbledore can now do is make preparations for the worst scenario by bringing the magical countries of the world together to fight as one, all the while hoping it doesn't come to this. While doing that, he also has to pay attention to Rose's safety. Which is why, he's allowed Bellatrix to place her Aurors at Hogwarts. Sigh with a sigh, he popped a lemon drop in his mouth. Dumbledore was weary, oh so weary. He just hoped someone else could do this in his stead, but alas, no one but him can be trusted with such a heavy responsibility. Andromeda looked at her sister who had been quite busy these days. How did you even get the organization's information? Bellatrix shrugged, I just caught one of its members. Andromeda couldn't believe it. What the hell really? This was quite the shocking news. How did you even get the information out of a member? The last one committed suicide before you could get anything. Bellatrix shrugged, I learn from my mistakes. Anyways, I think Axel might be in danger. Andromeda was instantly worried. What do we do? Bellatrix thought, well, I'm already sending Aurors to the school for the exchange program. I can arrange for his protection as well. Aurors. Just the word reminded Andromeda of her daughter who was still on training. She sighed. Nymphadora, even though she looks cheerful on the outside, she's changed after Ted's torture. Bellatrix looked at her sister. At one glance, she could tell her thoughts. She thought about the security for the exchange program. Come to think of it, wasn't the Auror Force short-staffed right now? Something can be arranged. AN title. Savage Axel POWRSTONES. Well, as for Patreon, the month is about to end, so you might as well subscribe in the new month. Though for gigachads who won't wait. Patreon.com/snollygostervote. Chapter 53. Savage Axel, you are listening at novelfull.audio. AN. I made a typing error in the. Gilderoy Lockhart is teaching defense against the dark arts and Narcissa Malfoy is teaching history of magic. My fellow author friend pointed it out to me when I had him read this chapter. We usually go through each other's chapters and discuss before posting. After his meeting with Martina, Axel went to the Slytherin dorms just to assess Luna's situation. Besides, he has to keep showing his face there every now and then anyway, so that people don't get suspicious. He entered just in time to see the yearly introduction begin. But this time, instead of Alaric Malcolm, a different person was sitting in the leader's position. It was a beautiful bronze-skinned girl who looked to be above 5th year who was sitting elegantly at the throne-like seat with her legs crossed. She had jet black hair that flowed to her shoulder like a curtain and her electric blue eyes looked at the students present authoritatively. Hello everyone, she said, her voice having an exotic accent to it. I'm Patricia Afonso, the new captain of the Slytherin Quidditch team, and a 6th-year Slytherin prefect. My father is the newly appointed Brazilian Minister of Magic, she said, sounding rather bored. And for those who care, yes, I'm a pure blood. For at least this year, I'm assuming control of the Slytherin house, replacing Alaric Malcolm, who did a rather poor job in his final year, she said matter-of-factly. There were voices of protest from various Slytherins who were loyal to Alaric, especially from Damien Malcolm and the group around him. Patricia raised a single eyebrow at the opposition. Is there any basis for your objection? He lost us the Quidditch Cup and the House Cup last year. Under his leadership, House Slytherin has turned into nothing but a bunch of bullies and villains. Does any one of you know how many points we lost last year just because of you guys picking fights and breaking rules? We came at the last position, with the least number of points, even below Hufflepuff. Do you know how disgraceful that is? She asked, and no one had any objection to that. The girl was spitting facts. I don't know about any of you, but I personally hate losing and losing so disgracefully. I had strayed far from leadership until now, but I can't let this continue. From today, I'm the captain of Quidditch team and the leader here. Does anyone have any objections? There seemed to be none. Damien seemed quite tempted, but Axel knew he was too much of a snake to do anything openly when he was at such a disadvantage. Though, one student who looked to be in his 3rd year raised his hand. Patricia nodded, good. Now that we have this out of the way, let's get to the main issue. Currently, all the other 3 houses see us as villains and losers because, well, we did break rules and we did lose the Quidditch and House Cup. Let me ask, are you guys okay with that? No. There were a few people who answered that instantly after, while others also slowly voiced their approval. Patricia shook her head. Lame. Are we all just a bunch of losers and bullies? No. Once again. Are you losers and bullies? No. Do you guys want to change it? Yes, Patricia nodded in satisfaction. Good. Then, let's begin the Slytherin redemption. She said as she began to announce the new rules. First of all, leave all the blood status and family status crap out of here. The treatment you receive in this house will be solely based on the points and reputation you earn for the house. If you do well, you'll be treated well and vice versa. Now, with that taken care of, the next thing on the list is Quidditch. 5 out of the 7 players on our team were 7th years, and our brilliant Captain Malcolm didn't find it necessary to train any extras since he was going to leave, and it was of no concern to him whether we are now left with an incomplete team. So, Quidditch trials are going to be held this weekend. If you become a player, you'll get special privileges in the house. Next, and the most important one. Patricia paused at this one as her blue eyes looked at everyone seriously. You have to stop doing what you've been taught in the circle last year, she said somberly. That got a reaction out of everyone including Axel. There were voices of protest as well as surprise and agreement from the students. I had quit a long time ago and you all need to do the same. Tell me, after learning what was taught to us, have you not noticed the effects? Are you not more volatile? More temperamental? Several Slytherins had a look of realization while some remained unmoved. Looking at the girl still speaking, Axel sighed as he shook his head in pity. What this girl was trying to do was quite virtuous and laudable. Too bad though, whether she realizes it or not, she's going to have a difficult time due to it. Most of the students of House Slytherin had signed up for the dark magic course and now even if they know it's harmful, some bastards are just too much of greedy sons of bitches to stop now. Due to that, they're only going to get worse, even if the majority come back to the right track. As for the Quidditch Cup, now that she's left with 2 players, there's a fat chance she'll be able to compete with other teams. To put it in a nutshell, she'll be bringing positive effects but she'll have to suffer the backlash. The next day, Axel was going to classes for the first time with his healed body. He was in quite a good mood as he went to the Great Hall. Right now, his only problem is, how much of his ability should he reveal? It was quite a complicated matter. Staying low-key has its benefits, but it also has its downsides. Like how Neville Longbottom of all people insulted him yesterday and he didn't do anything. Besides, he hasn't exactly been able to remain low-key despite his best attempts due to his bad luck. Sitting at the breakfast table, he looked at the New Year's timetable. First he had charms, then potions and then defense against the dark arts. Why do you not eat normal food? Sitting in front of him was Luna, who looked a bit drowsy. Axel frowned. Why are you still sitting with me? Did you not make any friends yet? By now, the rest of the first years were already sitting in groups, so he figured she ought to be in one of those. Luna tilted her head, I did. But they asked me to sit somewhere else, she said dreamily. Axel looked speechlessly at the girl. Did she really not realize or is she pretending not to? Whatever the case, Axel realized that it's not going to be easy keeping this girl out of trouble. Axel reached the charms class early and made to go straight to the last seat which, by now everyone knew, belonged to him. But, he found someone else sitting in his seat instead. What's up, Hunt? Asked Draco, sitting on his seat with his friends surrounding him. Malfoy, I've been in a good mood today. You better fuck off while it lasts, said Axel expressionlessly. He had been in a good mood ever since he'd healed. He cherished every second he could spend with his body not feeling uncomfortable anywhere for the first time in years. Thus, he was a bit more tolerable to minor annoyances. But, that seat was the best location to sit for him and he ain't a pushover who'd just give it up if an ant tries to claim it. Eddie E.T. Malfoy got angry while his friends had a mixed reaction. Draco, why don't we sit at our usual place? Asked Pansy. She really liked Axel and didn't want Draco to antagonize him. Though some like Crabbe and Goyle were just cracking their knuckles, trying to intimidate Axel. But Draco ignored Pansy as he smirked at Axel. What's up, Hunt? Not so brazen anymore. He asked smugly with his wand in his hand, looking overly confident. Axel sighed. Of course this guy wouldn't listen. He knew that Dravo thought he had no reason to back down. He must have made some minor progress over the summer, he must have also been super confident after having his mother as a professor, but... Look, you idiot, said Axel slowly, as if to make the idiot understand. I know that you think you are hot stuff now after learning some new spell and mommy's got your back, but... He paused as he looked down at his hands. But this is the worst moment to try and pick a fight with me. He said seriously. This really was the worst moment for people to be picking on Axel. With his body healed, he was just raring to flex his new power. His whole body was bursting with power and his decisions were quite reckless as he was still on the high of this newly gained power. The smirk faded from Malfoy's face as he suddenly felt that this might not be a good idea. But as he remembered all the advantages he had, he once again forced a smirk. Oh yeah. What will you do, huh? Did you forget about what Patricia said last night? You'll have to face the consequences if you try to attack me for just sitting on a seat, he said confidently. But suddenly, all the Slytherins felt a chill down their spine as they looked at Axel, who was just looking at Malfoy, his head slightly tilted to one side. Axel knew that Malfoy was right, and that's the reason why he hadn't done anything. But, does he really think Axel would give a fuck? Not at the moment at least. Axel had slowly began walking towards Malfoy until he was standing right beside him. Malfoy couldn't do anything even as Axel lightly put a hand on his shoulder. Malfoy, trust me, you want to fuck off now, before I make you give your own wand another blowjob. Looking at Axel, Malfoy paled as he felt goosebumps rising on his arms. He found himself instinctively backing away as he felt the same fear that he felt during their dueling match, right before Axel had burned his mouth by shoving in his wand. He heard sounds of sniggering and found that Blaise Zabini and Theodore Knott were laughing at the blowjob comment. That one right there was a violation, mate, said Theodore between chuckles. Even Pansy and Millicent were covering their mouths at Axel's savage reply to Draco. Seeing this made Draco forget his fear due to the rage he felt. You cripple, he exclaimed as he pointed his wand straight at Axel, ready to curse the bastard. But instead, he found out that his hand was empty. You've done it now, muttered Axel. What's with these ants calling him a cripple? Yesterday it was that Neville and today it's this guy. Do they think that he's scared of their mommy or something? Do they think he's a pushover? Why do people like Malcolm even dare to attack him? That's right. Because he has indeed been acting like a pushover. He hasn't yet shown anyone even a little bit of what he's capable of right now. Why has he been so passive? Because he wanted to stay out of trouble. But if trouble is still coming his way anyway, and he's facing annoyances anyway, then, why not simply do whatever I want? He wondered as he gripped Malfoy by his hair. Getting into trouble is much better than being insulted by ants, he decided. In the next moment, the wand he'd snatched had been returned to its rightful place, Draco's mouth, after which Axel lifted Draco off his seat and threw him across the class under everyone's shocked gazes. Malfoy might have been fine with just that. Too bad two bulky bodies of Crabbe and Goyle followed right after, landing on top of him, completely flattening him to the ground. Crick crack an. Ah, that ought to have hurt. The skills, ingredients, potions and exercises are no joke. Savage Axel strikes again POWSTONES. Come read ahead and support me in the new month. Patreon.com/snollygoster. Chapter 54. Savage Axel Strikes Again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. That ought to teach him a lesson, right? Muttered Axel, dusting his hands as he looked at Draco buried under Crabbe and Goyle. Even though he wasn't really sure whether the guy learned his lesson or not, but there was one thing that Axel was sure of. This was satisfying and he didn't regret doing it. He didn't do this because of the seat. No, that much offense, he could take. In fact, he didn't even intend to hurt him for that. But, when Malfoy called him a cripple, Axel just didn't find a reason compelling enough to stop him from doing whatever he wanted. Neville only managed to escape because he was Daphne's friend and just too pathetic. Wah! Did you see that? Did he just? How the hell did he do that? Of course, the onlookers were understandably flabbergasted upon witnessing the unbelievable spectacle of someone literally throwing their classmate with just one hand. This wasn't something that would be possible unless you have the physical strength of a peak athlete. But, looking at Axel's lean frame, they simply couldn't believe that it was him who did that even if it happened right before their eyes. At this moment, Professor Flitwick ambled into the class, witnessing a commotion going on. Can anyone tell me what is happening here? And this is how the House Slytherin lost its first points even before any of the houses gain a single point. Draco Malfoy was sent to the hospital wing, but the matter wasn't too serious, considering that bones can be fixed in a jiffy in the wizarding world, but the bastard made it look like he was dying. Flitwick was quite lenient on Axel. Axel had managed to achieve the highest scores in the first year and had always stayed quiet in his class. The diminutive professor had personally witnessed the boy's improvement, from not being able to properly perform the Lumos spell to perfectly casting all the first-year spells. And Draco Malfoy was definitely not in the right, calling such a boy out on his disability, making fun of the weakness that he had been working so hard to overcome. Of course, this was a pleasant surprise for Axel, who was expecting higher point loss and a detention. "Thanks for going easy on the punishment, Professor." Being the last one to leave, Axel thanked the professor before he started to leave. Professor Flitwick smiled. "Try keeping out of trouble, Mr. Hunt," he said simply. "I will try, Professor," replied Axel. But, his footsteps stopped when he reached the door. "Professor, I was curious why I was so lenient?" asked Flitwick, finishing the sentence for him, to which, Axel nodded. The diminutive professor smiled as he looked down at Axel from his elevated seat. "Because, Mr. Hunt, there were times when I have also went through similar situations as you when people made fun of my height." Axel's eyes widened a fraction upon hearing that. Of course. Why didn't he think of that? Being so short permanently might actually be worse than his situation in some aspects. And people simply tend to never consider how bad he must also feel to live with this reality, only seeing his jovial and comical sides mostly. Flitwick shook his head. "You don't need to look at me like that, Mr. Hunt. That was me decades ago. Over the years, I have long come to love myself the way I am. As you can see from my achievements, I have learned to embrace my weakness and turn it into my strength." "Turned it into your strength?" Enlightened, Axel looked at the professor in surprise for several seconds before he left in silence, his mind abuzz with thoughts. Very quick, the news of Axel destroying Malfoy was spread throughout the whole school. Of course, no one really believed exactly how he did it, but Axel's name had began making waves again. Though Axel ignored everything and simply attended his classes. But of course, actions had consequences, and some people were not happy with his actions. In an abandoned classroom, two snitches were flying around, with an athletic girl with bronze skin and electric blue eyes zooming around on her broom, trying to catch them. After a number of attempts, the exhausted girl sighed as she dismounted her limited edition broomstick. "Maybe I should just stick to playing as a chaser," she murmured, looking at the snitches that were difficult for her to even follow. With all the players gone and Gryffindors having Rose Potter, she was forced to try playing as a seeker to have a shot at victory. "Patricia." The door to the empty classroom opened, as her loyal friend entered. "You need to hear this," said her friend, telling her the latest piece of news. Patricia frowned as she heard of the incident. If a mere second-year boys were to start opposing her from day one, how would they win the trophy this year? And who was this Axel Hunt anyway? Did he not hear her clearly yesterday that, or does he not fear the consequences? "Get me the information on this boy and call him here when the classes are over," she ordered before she went back to practicing. "She'll make an example out of this kid." For the last class of the day, which was Dada, Axel sat in the last seat with Daphne. "So, I hear that you've been getting along with the new girl?" asked Daphne as soon as she came. Axel looked at her with dead eyes. "Seriously, I actually pulled off such a stunt, and the first thing you ask me about is Luna." Daphne lowered her head a little as if in thought. "Well, I have my priorities straight," she responded in a voice low enough that Axel couldn't hear her. "What was that?" "Nothing. So, what is this news I'm hearing about you blowing people into the air with magic?" Axel shook his head. "Nothing much. He was just annoying me, so I taught him a lesson." Daphne looked at him with scrutiny. This is not like you," she observed. "Usually you'd have been more. I don't know, cautious." Axel thought about it as he looked down at his hands. "You are right. But that was when I had no real power to rely on. Now though. He clenched his fist and felt the power overflowing through him. Let's just say this is not a good time for people to pick on me, he said with a sigh. He wondered if he was going mad. Daphne nodded in understanding. It's not at all wrong, she said, noticing his doubts. You know, Tori, Mom and I cried happy tears for days after we found out she was healed, she revealed with a nostalgic smile. One of us would just randomly start crying after once again realizing that it was real, and then in the next minute, the other two's dams would also be opened, and in no time, we'd start bawling our eyes out, listening to her. Axel fell deep into thought as once again realized just how different it is to have a family. Despite having a chronic disease like that, he still felt a bit jealous of Astoria for having such a loving mother and daughter. Hey! By the way, Luna is cute, right? Asked Daphne out of the blue, interrupting his thoughts. Yeah, wait, what did you say? Asked Axel, who didn't quite hear what she said. Never mind, said Daphne, looking away. Soon, Gilderoy Lockhart entered the class, making many of the students cheer. Lockhart spread out his hands, as if to indicate that yes, he was the one. Ladies and gentlemen, congratulations. You finally get to meet me, he said, flashing everyone a smile with his abnormally white teeth. Me, Gilderoy Lockhart, Order of Merlin 3rd Class, one of the top 30 most followed people on Hooter and Magebook, and which weekly 5-time most charming smile winner and much, but you already know that, don't you? Looking at the cringy behavior of the man, Axel could only shake his head in disgust. Is this guy for real? Daphne also shook her head in bewilderment. Let's just hope he knows how to teach, she murmured. And then I disarmed him without even looking at him. Like this, Expelliarmus. He shouted, clearly looking at the dummy sneakily from the corner of his eyes. Well, Lockhart turned out to be much of a comical guy, as he'd exaggeratedly demonstrate each and every spell on a practice dummy while bragging non-stop. But, as it turned out, even though the guy was narcissistic as fuck, he at least seemed to know his stuff. The spells were a bit weak, but still, he managed to cast them well enough, muttered Axel. Daphne nodded, well, better at teaching than at least Umbridge so far. But his fame is undeserved. No way he can do the things he's bragged about with just this, was her judgment. Axel looked at her quizzically. Why aren't you acting like the others? He asked, looking at other girls of the class who were definitely much more excited to be taught by Lockhart. Daphne looked at Axel for a moment, because, there's simply no comparison, she said conclusively. Axel didn't really understand what, but oh well, at least this professor was turning out to be fine so far. He's so self-absorbed that Axel can easily sleep in this class. But right after he had this thought, the system gave him a notification after a long time. Axel, he has been using dark magic. Fuck. And that promised Axel that this GUI.is definitely not good news. After the class ended, Axel found 2 Slytherin students waiting for him right outside. You need to come with us. Patricia wants to talk to you. Axel frowned at their ordering tone. He couldn't say he didn't expect things to go this way, but, avoiding this situation now would only make it more complicated. They might think he's afraid of them or something. And, when he wasn't afraid of a group of grown-ass wizards who were using dark magic, why would he be afraid of this girl and her gang? So, he decided to meet up with this Brazilian young lady and give it to her straight to keep him out of this whole charade of hers. The door opened and Axel walked into the classroom which the 2 Slytherins had led him to. Looking inside, he was a bit surprised when a green streak flew past him, flying all around a large classroom at high speeds, chasing after a snitch. ZZZNNNN*. Patricia whizzed past him a few more times, coming dangerously close to crashing into him, but Axel didn't move an inch. While waiting for her, Axel found out about 2 things. ZNNNNNN. 1. This girl was trying to intimidate him, and 2. The noise made by the snitches in the closed space was extremely annoying. Especially since he had misophonia. Finding no success in intimidating the boy, Patricia landed as she went to sit on a top of a bench wiping the sweat off head. Her dark hair was tied in a ponytail and her body clad in a sports bra and leggings were glistening with sweat. "Why'd you call me?" asked Axel, a bit impatient from the wait already. Axel Hunt, the genius top of the class in first year. "You were an asset to Slytherin last year," she said, taking a sip from her bottle, her breathing still a bit uneven from the earlier exertion. Normally, anyone male would be flustered in this scenario. But Axel was not just anyone. "No shit," he muttered with a bored expression. The atmosphere of tension and pressure she'd created in the past 2 minutes was completely destroyed as Patricia found no words to that. There was brief silence in which the only sound in the room was coming from the 2 snitches that were buzzing by both of them every few seconds. So annoying, thought Axel as he tried not to cringe at the irritating noise the snitches made. He wished she'd proceed a bit faster. Letting go of the games, Patricia decided to dive straight to the point. "You've been called here because of your earlier act of aggression against your fellow Slytherin, Draco Malfoy. Since you broke the rules created on the first day, in the first class with no regard to the impact it is going to have on the rest of the Slytherin, you are, as warned, going to receive an equivalent punishment from the house," she said in a way as if she was a judge sentencing a criminal. Axel looked at her exasperatedly, "And what is this punishment going to be?" "Usually, it is to be decided in front of the whole house. But," she said as she paused, trying to make Axel anxious, "since you could be an asset to Slytherin, I'm willing to lighten your punishment," she said graciously. Axel was now beginning to get irritated, plus, the 3 snitch constantly passing by him were also not helping. "What is it?" he asked. There was no harm in listening, right? Maybe he could settle it peacefully, right? Patricia nodded. "You only need to apologize in front of all the house and promise to abide by the rules from now on," she said as if this was a light punishment. "Yep, no way it's going to end peacefully." Axel resolutely shook his head, "No chance." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "Oh. Are you really denying it? Are you aware of the consequences?" she asked, her voice taking a threatening tone. Though, in Axel's eyes, she was nothing but a little kitten hissing at him. "Look here, you daddy's princess. I get that you need to make a show out of punishing the person who broke the rules to establish your dominance, but believe me." He paused as his eyes glowed dangerously. "You're picking the wrong person to pick on here. Keep me out of these power plays of yours and I'll leave you alone." Patricia frowned as she felt somehow intimidated by the boy. But then, rage overtook her fear when she thought that a mere second-year boy said these things to her. Daddy's princess. That was most infuriating. Frowning, she took out her wand to teach the boy some manners, but, swoosh, she was caught off guard when a spell came flying at her out of nowhere, disarming her with such force and precision that her wand shot out of her hand like a bullet as it broke through the window behind her, falling outside. Looking at her the hole in the window, cold sweat flowed down Patricia's back as she imagined what would have happened if she took even half of that force. Her hand that had held the wand had a burning feeling to it. Axel shook his hand as he inwardly clicked his tongue. He still isn't adept at controlling this new power of his. His precision is now top-notch but control is severely lacking. Pocketing his wand which he'd drawn within milliseconds, he glared at the girl. "I'm telling you again. Stay out of my way. You don't know even half of what I'm capable of," he said as he started to leave. Before he left though, he reached out with his hand and, a small golden ball got caught between his 2 fingers. Wah! Patricia sat there, tongue-tied as she witnessed Axel casually catching the snitch without even properly looking at it. "Annoying balls," he muttered before his hand blurred. Ding! An ear-splitting sound rang out before the constant buzzing of the room suddenly stopped. With a stiff face, Patricia slowly turned her head to find the 2 broken and still twitching remains of 2 snitches lying on the floor. Even after Axel had left, Patricia sat there in stunned silence for a long time, looking at the two snitches. In those broken remains, she could also somehow see the Quidditch cup with House Slytherin's name on it. Slowly, an obsessive gleam lit up in her blank eyes. I need him. An. Is it that time of the month for her? Come read ahead and support me on Patreon. Motivation is needed for great writing. Patreon.com/snollygoster and also vote. Chapter 55. Is it that time of the month for her? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Step, 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 sounds of heels reverberated in the quiet and empty hospital wing as a woman walked towards a particular bed. The occupant of the said bed, who was constantly moaning in pain, perked up as soon as he saw the woman. Mother! He called out, almost forgetting to keep up his injured act. The woman, Professor Narcissa, frowned looking at her son. Seeing her son's acting, she wasn't at all moved. Draco, stop being so pathetic, she said, looking at her son in distaste. You're not fooling anyone by pretending to be injured. But mother. He attacked me for no reason at all. And he didn't even get punished. Please punish him. Draco Malfoy was terribly frustrated right now. He had wanted to get back at Axel ever since that humiliating duel. Too bad he didn't have the guts to face him last year. But, he had thought that this year would be different. This year, he had his mother teaching at Hogwarts and his magic had also improved. He had even trained a lot to be a seeker. So, he had naturally thought that he would be the center of attention at Hogwarts and also teach that cripple a lesson. Too bad, he got humiliated at the start of the year. Now he could only depend on his mother to seek revenge for him. Contrary to his expectations though, Narcissa's frown only deepened. Lucius has spoiled you rotten. Did I not tell you that I'm not your mother here? You will not be getting any special treatment. Stop making a fool out of yourself and stop acting so spoiled. I didn't come here to see you whining like a child. Mother, tried Draco once again, but Narcissa cut him off. Mr. Malfoy, she said, her tone becoming stricter, do not expect any help from me. From now on, you will stop these childish actions which your father has instilled into you and conduct yourself with the way you have been taught by your etiquette tutor. Draco looked pitifully at his mother. When he was younger, she used to give him whatever he wanted, but slowly, she has changed. She no longer even pays attention to him, let alone fulfilling his demands. Draco sighed pitifully, yes mother. Come with us. Patricia wants to see you. Hearing the two Slytherin students, Daphne's brows furrowed at the mention of Patricia's name. Unlike Axel, she didn't have the tendency to be ignorant about everything. So, she knew quite well who Patricia Afonso was. The Brazilian beauty was quite popular at Hogwarts due to her looks and being at the top of her year. But, her popularity was now at its peak since her father was now the Minister of Magic of Magical Brazil. And that girl wants to see Axel. What would that girl want with Axel? She thought as Axel left her with a simple wave. As Axel left, her Ravenclaw friends came to her side, all looking at Axel's back. Has he become more handsome? Asked Lisa Turpin. Daphne frowned. All these friends of hers like to do is talk about useless things and gossip. That's why she finds their company a bit undesirable. His hairstyle has changed and he's gotten even taller, observed Padma Patil. And yeah, his skin looks quite good. Mandy Brocklehurst sighed. No wonder Martina couldn't wait yesterday night, she muttered, and the other girls had affirming responses. But, Daphne grew puzzled. What are you talking about? Sully looked at Daphne in surprise, you don't know. It's all over the forums. Daphne had to roll her eyes on that. Of course I don't. It would seem like Axel's indifference was becoming contagious. Now she no longer wasted her time on her Magi.mirror. Seeing this, her friends looked at each other with a who's gonna tell her look. Eventually, Mandy Brocklehurst was the one to speak first. Not long after the dinner was over, Martina and Axel were found going into the broom closet together. They were totally shagging in there. Yeah, people even heard Martina's moan before they put up the privacy charms. And the recorded memory, of the time they left together. Did you see how tired Axel looked? And Martina was smiling. Daphne was actually well aware of the fact that her friends were jealous of her friendly relationship with Axel. And she knew better than to trust them. But still, she was indubitably perturbed. Martina. It's Martina again. Lunchtime. Axel ate the breakfast calmly as he sifted through the minds of first years. Yep, legilimency wasn't as difficult as one would imagine. At least not for him. Currently, he had only learnt reading the surface thoughts, but it was good progress, as far as he was considered. This skill, he was simply learning because of its high utility, not because of any urgency or reward like the time with occlumency. Legilimency, as he found out through the system knowledge, wasn't simply reading someone's mind as he'd believed. It's far more complex than that. He already knew from his insights into occlumency that mind is quite a complex, many-layered mess. And legilimency is an art of delving into this mess, understanding it, interpreting it and, under certain conditions, even influencing it. With the system's knowledge, if he is talented and proficient enough, no mind is inaccessible to him. Not even the most protected ones. Good for him, he already has the talent in droves, if the system's claims were to be believed. And he just needed to gain the proficiency. Which is why, as he sat at the Slytherin table during lunch, he was practicing the skill on unsuspecting first years. But while he was busy, a girl came to stand in front of him, attracting the attention of a number of students. "Ah, Mr. Hunt." A faltering voice was heard, disturbing him. Axel scowled as soon as he saw who the person was. "Did I not tell you to stop bothering me?" he asked, his voice containing danger. Patricia bit her lips upon his hostile response. She really did regret threatening him. But how could she have known this guy would turn out to be a godly seeker? "Mr. Hunt, I sincerely apologize for my earlier transgressions. But could you give me a chance to speak?" "What is it?" asked Axel in irritation. He didn't know what she wanted, but her eyes looking at him were a bit strange. It was similar to how one would look at a delicious meal. Patricia put up a privacy charm around them as she quickly sat in front of him. "As you demanded, your punishment for breaking rules has already been waived off. Furthermore, I have a very attractive offer for you," she said, leaning closer on the table. Axel didn't stop eating his lunch. "Go on." He was a bit perplexed with her sudden change in attitude. Just a while ago, she was quite rude and threatening. But now she couldn't be more polite and simpering. He didn't think intimidating her would result into this. Patricia straightened, putting her hands on the table. "Mr. Hunt, what you did with the snitch, it was such an impressive display of skill that it has me absolutely convinced of your qualifications. So, I would like to ask, would you be interested in joining the Slytherin Quidditch team?" she asked with a charming smile. She didn't think Axel would reject her. After all, who can reject such an attractive offer? "No. Is there anything else?" Patricia's momentum crumpled. She couldn't understand why Axel refused without any fluctuations in his mood. Heck, the guy didn't even pause chewing his food, as if her offer was nothing but air to him. What the ahm? Pardon me. But I don't understand. Are you actually rejecting the seeker position in the Slytherin Quidditch team? She asked, understandably flummoxed. Axel paused in his eating of system-recommended food as his eyes once again glinted dangerously. "Yeah, is that a problem?" Flinch. Patricia realized that perhaps she had moved too soon. Clearly, saying anything more right now would only irritate this demon more. So, putting on a flattering smile, she said, "No, not at all. I can only ask you to think about it. The offer will always be there in case you change your mind, saying so, she cancelled the privacy charms and left quickly. But while leaving, her mind only had one thought. Not giving up. Not long after she left though, another girl came to stand in front of Axel. And this time, the number of eyes gathering on him increased a lot. "So, how is Luna doing?" asked Martina. Axel furrowed his eyebrows. "Not bad, but not good either. The house is trying to change this year so it's not as dangerous, but she's not making friends." Martina pursed her lips. "Please try to keep an eye on her. I'll try to help her in making friends." Axel shrugged. "Good luck with that," he muttered, thinking of it as a daunting task. Even though Luna was quite different, he had one thing in common with her. They don't fit in. Meanwhile, sitting at the Ravenclaw table, Daphne looked at the scene of beautiful and powerful girls meeting Axel one after another, and her knife savagely dug itself into the food she was having, scaring those who were sitting around her. She was feeling a burning hostility towards these girls. They're only approaching him now when he's healed. They're only realizing his awesomeness now. Such superficial girls. Humph. After lunch Axel went to attend his very first history of magic class. Thinking of who the teacher was, he couldn't say that he wasn't worried. The professor whose class he was going to attend was the mother of Draco, the boy whose bones he had freshly broken this morning for no big reason. "Is there any black sister left with whom I haven't gotten into conflict yet?" he muttered in annoyance. Entering the class, he naturally sat beside Daphne at the last seat since they had history of magic together. But today, Daphne's mood didn't seem good. Her mouth was forming into a slight pout that happens when she's unhappy, and she didn't smile even at him like she usually does. "What's up with you?" "Nothing," she replied. Still, the pout didn't go away, and neither did she smile. Axel shrugged. He decided that he couldn't be bothered. After all, he had other things to worry about, like the mother of Draco burning him down. He hoped it wouldn't be a similar case as Umbridge. It wouldn't be anything he can't handle, but it'll definitely be troublesome. They sat in silence while Axel practiced his legilimency and Daphne fidgeted restlessly. Finally, Daphne couldn't hold it in and opened her mouth. But at that moment, the door opened. Professor Narcissa had already arrived into the class, walking in gracefully. She was wearing a fashionable but conservative black dress and designer robes. She had a pair of glasses on her eyes and her expression was dignified. Overall, she gave off the impression of a strict teacher. Some older students had called her a MILF for some reason though. As a habit engraved by Umbridge, the whole class greeted her with a "good afternoon," to which she nodded. "Good afternoon. My name is Narcissa Malfoy and I'll be teaching you the history of magic this year." Axel was a bit relieved that she hadn't targeted him yet, though he wondered why she specifically said, "this year." Come to think of it, why did she even have to teach? Professor Narcissa continued. "This year, we'll be focusing mainly on history of magical Britain and history of magical Japan. This year, since we're going to be having classes with Japan, the ministry has provided some important information about the Japanese magical history, culture, and education that are mandatory for all of you to learn beforehand. Since we have only limited days before the delegation arrives, let's first focus on magical Japan rather than Britain," she said, opening up her notes. Finding the topic interesting, Axel focused the lecture, finding his worries unfounded. Daphne's pout also faded away as she also focused on the lecture. Magical Japan is a powerful magical country that's famous in Japan. It's relatively unknown here in Europe due to the large distance, but since magical portals can now be developed quite safely between the countries, they, like the other Asian superpowers like magical China and magical India, have begun to actively participate in the worldly affairs, like the dueling championship and Quidditch World Cup, and thus getting popular throughout the world. The Japanese have their own way of casting magic. It involves hand seals and incantation, but it doesn't necessarily need a magical conduit like a wand. Technically, we can also learn to do it, but it needs a ridiculous amount of practice to learn, and the hand seals need to be very accurate, lest you harm your hands. That's why, the Japanese also learn to use wands magic alongside their hand seal magic. Axel looked down at his hands. System, would it be worthwhile for me to learn hand seal magic? Affirmative. The main component needed for that magic is dexterity. The more dexterous and faster you are, the better you would be forming the heel seals. That's so. Axel suppressed a grin. Then this magic seems tailor-made for him. He was now looking forward to the arrival of this school. Smiling lightly, he focused his attention back on the class. After the lecture, Axel looked at the pouting Daphne. He didn't know what was bothering her, but he needed her help with something. Hey, Daphne glanced at him before she looked away. Assured that she was listening, he continued, there are 2 things I need your help with. Hearing that, Daphne paid full attention to him as she put away her sullenness. What is it? She asked. No matter what the case, she'll always be there to help. I got an offer from Patricia to play as the seeker for the Slytherin Quidditch team. What? How? That managed to shock her enough to stop her cold behavior. Well, it's like this. He said as he summarized the events. Daphne fell into a daze after listening to him. So, it actually was about this. She muttered in realization. What did you say? Nothing. Axel shrugged, anyways I refused. But, Daphne was stunned, the fuck? You actually refused? Yeah. But that I want to know what would happen if I had accepted. Would it have been good or troublesome? He asked. Actually, he had no idea what it meant to be a Quidditch player. So, he thought he might as well ask his Quidditch fanatic friend. Daphne knew him well enough to know if he'd find something troublesome or not. His first choice was, of course, rejection, but Patricia's reaction, as if she found it absurd that he'd even consider refusing, made him rethink his decision and wonder if there was something he was missing. As the shock subsided, Daphne realized that it was Axel they were talking about. So, refusing kinda is actually the better choice. On second thought, I think you made the right decision. You would have found it quite troublesome. She muttered. Isn't it? Yeah. The fame and publicity gained from it is just too high. Especially if the player is as absurd as you. That made him pause. Fame. It reminded of a mission he had half given up upon. Really? He had only watched one Quidditch match in his life. So of course he didn't know it was this big. Daphne nodded, of course. I'm afraid if you played, not only Britain, you'd be famous even in the foreign countries once the videos of your play are uploaded to the Magi Hive. You have both the looks and skills, so you'll get viral pretty quick. Since you want to keep a low profile, it would be too troublesome for you. That was the past him. The current him needed all the attention he could get for an absurd mission of his, since he had no other choice. He needs to know how to use this pendant of his, which is supposedly going to be very helpful against Voldemort. If Voldy comes next year, he'd helplessly have to see this world being conquered. And that's unacceptable unless the conqueror was Axel himself. So, what was the other matter? Daphne, who thought that she couldn't provide much help for his first problem, asked for the second problem, bringing Axel out of his thoughts. Though, she still sounded quite sulky, showing her unhappiness. Yeah, well, I wanted to know if you can have a way to help Luna make friends, he said, foregoing the thoughts of Quidditch for the moment. Why did he ask her? Because as it was, he could clearly see that little rabbit Luna being eaten alive by the Slytherin snakes. He can't always keep an eye on her, and Martina, being the awkward introvert she is, can't do shit in helping her make friends. Daphne, on the other hand, has loads of friends, and she even has a little sister. So he thought she'd be the best person to ask. Why? Are you so concerned about her? She asked casually, but her eyes were sharp. Axel rolled his eyes. I couldn't care less. But this Martina somehow does. Absurdly so. She is so desperate that she dragged me to the broom closet yesterday to ask my help. Daphne froze. So, that's what it was about. She muttered. Of course. She even came to my table in front of everyone today, making me quite irritated. I can't let this keep going. So, that's what that was about, she repeated. Then, weren't your worries all useless? Axel waved his hand in front of the dazed Daphne. The hell is wrong with you? Why are you suddenly smiling now? He asked, looking at the goofy smile stretching on her lips. Daphne coughed as she suppressed her smile. Nothing. Leave this matter to me, she said in a bright mood. I'll make Luna so many friends that no one would bully her. Luna, tick, muttered Axel, looking at her weird behavior throughout the day. Is it that time of the month for her? According to the system's general knowledge, sometimes witches get quite temperamental during that time. Vote and support patreon.com/snollygoster. Chapter 56. Hogwarts vs. Mahudakoro. You are listening at novelfull.audio. No. You can't just do or say whatever you like, Luna. You can't say things that people can't understand or find weird. You should try to be normal, to blend in. Explained Daphne, her expression already a bit troubled and tired. Luna slightly tilted her head in confusion, but, why would I need to do that? I like to do things that I like. Daphne shook her head, but then you wouldn't be able to make friends, she stated, a bit exasperated. How long had this been going on? Luna smiled. But don't I already have friends? You do. Luna gave her a puzzled look. Aren't you my friend? Looking into the pure eyes of the girl, Daphne couldn't bear to deny it. I meant in House Slytherin, she clarified. But I have Axel there. No you don't. Daphne snapped. I don't. Damn it, thought Daphne. The words had left her mouth before she could stop herself, but she regretted it when she saw the innocent girl looking at her cluelessly. Daphne got up. All right, we'll talk later. Saying so, she left before the girl could make her more frustrated. Daphne sighed. What the hell was she thinking, promising Axel that she'll help this girl make a lot of friends with so much confidence? Thinking. Oh right. She wasn't thinking at all. At least not anything remotely rational. Daphne sighed again. What was wrong with her these days? Every time when it comes to Axel, she finds herself acting like an idiot and taking impulsive actions. Her thoughts aren't rational and she finds it difficult to look him in the eyes. And then there's the damn heartbeat. It increases to such levels that it makes her fear he'll hear it. Is it really what I think it is? She thought helplessly. It's not like she's dense or ignorant. She knows what the most likely reason for this is. And it's not a surprise really. Axel was her Achilles heel. The moment she got curious, it was already game over for her. But it's quite an unfortunate thing to happen to her. Just being friends with that guy was as difficult as taming a unicorn. She can't fathom how she can reach past that stage. It's impossible. She thought. Not with him pushing away everyone when they try to get close. Nope, she'd rather stay in denial and hope this was just one of those things in life that you want, but can never achieve. Like being reborn, or traveling to a different world. It'll most likely pass over, right? Or maybe not. As the days passed, Hogwarts was abuzz with activity. Since it's going to be having guests, preparations had to be made. The house elves worked overtime to clean up the castle while students were educated about the basics of the Japanese culture, and a portal was being set up near the Quidditch pitch, at the usual portkey location. With all the preparations being taken care of, there were only a few matters which needed to be settled before Hogwarts would be prepared to host the newcomers. The day before the arrival of the guests, before dinner, Dumbledore stood at the podium in the Great Hall, with all the students gathered. "I hope everyone is here as I have a few announcements to make," said Dumbledore, gathering everyone's attention. "As everyone is aware, tomorrow is the day when the delegation from Mahudakoro will be arriving, and our preparations are almost complete. In regards to this event, there are a few issues which I'm going to address now. First is, the language barrier," he said, and the students got curious. No one here knows Japanese and neither would most of them know English. How would they communicate? Dumbledore smiled. This is also one of the main reasons why cooperations like this were not usually supported. How would we communicate? With English being the universal language, many people throughout the world are able to speak it, but many non-natives still don't know the language. Would the teachers who are coming be able to teach you properly in a non-native language? Would the students who are coming to learn from our teachers be able to understand? How are the students between the two schools supposed to communicate? These are the common questions that have frequently arisen. Many students only realize this issue now while some had already thought about it. Some already knew the solution while some were clueless. As Dumbledore paused, a mild discussion started between the students. Dumbledore smiled reassuringly as he spread his hands. "But now, I am delighted to assure you that, with the development of magical technology, it is no longer an issue." He made a go-on gesture and the prefects of each house began distributing something to every student in their respective houses. Being the closest to the corner, Axel was among the first ones to get it. Axel looked at the pendant-like object in his hand with curiosity, but he could already hear the students. "The translation amulet. Nice. Oh, so that is the translation amulet. It's my first time seeing one in person. How would you have seen it before? You've most likely never traveled out of Britain, why would you even need it? So, it's like this." Smiling, Dumbledore continued, "Yes, for those who do not know, these are the translation amulets that would help you understand any Japanese you hear. Quite an ingenious little invention, especially since it can be mass-produced without much difficulty. Ever since their invention, they've become quite popular in the ICW and other international meetings." The students all stared at their amulets excitedly. Meanwhile, when Martina looked at hers, she could already tell how it was made. Elder Futhark runes to make the information storage and Celtic ones to make converter and an understating. This is alright, but the runes are machine inscribed, so won't work for as long, and material is not good. Temporary unbreakable charm, can only convert Japanese to English. A cheap knockoff of the one I designed, she murmured, already analyzing everything. Legally speaking, she could sue this company since she owned the patent, but the Valentinos were already drowning in money and there was nothing groundbreaking in this invention, so she decided to just let it rest and focus on what Dumbledore was saying instead. Students are requested to keep their amulets secure. In case of it being damaged or lost, getting a replacement will be difficult and the one who damages them will have to pay for compensation, said Dumbledore seriously. Moving on, in Quidditch, aside from the usual matches, there will be one more match that will be played. Hogwarts vs Mahudakoro. What? Really? Yeah. This made everyone excited. Instead of competing between houses, they'd be competing with a different school. This time, they can indisputably support one team. Dumbledore smiled at the students' enthusiasm, so the main question that arises is, how will the members be chosen? The old man raised a valid question. Who would be the members? Every player would demand a spot in that team, and there are differing opinions on who is better suited to be on the team. And then, when the members of different houses form a team, would they be able to play in harmony? In lieu of such conflicts, we have opted to choose a simple solution. The house team that wins the Interhouse Championship will get the opportunity to represent Hogwarts in the upcoming match between the schools. May the best team win, said Dumbledore, subtly glancing towards the Gryffindor table at the end of his sentence with slight amusement. Chrs. There was a loud cheer as 3 of the 4 houses cheered. hoping they might be able to win and represent Hogwarts while the Slytherins didn't look so happy. Hearing all the noise, Martina just shook her head. She could already tell that the main aim of Dumbledore was to have Gryffindor, or rather Rose Potter, win this thing. With the Slytherin team in shambles and the other houses inferior to the Gryffindor's current team, Gryffindor will most likely win this thing. With this he has at least made sure that none of the players from the Slytherin team can enter. When the noise subsided, Dumbledore continued, "Now, the next issue that needs to be addressed. Since the exchange program is such an unprecedented and important event, the security needs to be bolstered. Hence, Aurors would be stationed here at Hogwarts starting from tomorrow to keep an eye on things and make sure nothing untoward happens and causes an international issue. Students are requested to follow their security measures and lessen their burdens. That will be all. Now, you can start filling up your bellies." "I shan't keep you any longer," said Dumbledore with a smile as he left the podium. With Dumbledore's announcements, everyone was now excited. Some were discussing about Quidditch, comparing the different house teams and how they could win, while some were playing with their newly obtained amulets. Axel, on the other hand, was just minding his own business, eating his boiled and tasteless food. But suddenly, Axel felt goosebumps all over for some reason. Patricia looked at Axel with a half-crazed/half-desperate look. With the stakes risen so high, Axel was the only chance that the Slytherin team had of making it to the finals. She had to recruit him, no matter what. 12, Grimmauld Place. The two Black sisters were in the kitchen, doing what they do best. Andromeda was cooking while Bellatrix was eating. Bellatrix sighed, "It's been crazy busy." "Truly." Andromeda smiled, "I can imagine. But it's going to be quite beneficial for Britain." Bellatrix shook her head, "That's not why I'm doing this." Sure, it was good for Britain, but that wasn't her main goal. Andromeda furrowed her eyebrows. "Then why?" "Bella, tell me already." Bellatrix just shook her head. "I have to increase our power and influence quickly. Ninjas are good hit wizards, but they don't accept requests from just anyone. With this, we'll be able to hire them with much more ease." Andromeda stopped in action as she realized something. You actually found some clues, didn't you?" Bellatrix nodded seriously, "It's tricky, but yes. Basically, our suspicions were correct. The organization is indeed from that place. Atlantis. The most powerful and mysterious magical country. A country that's always been closed off to the outsiders. It neither interferes with the outside world, nor does it let the outside world interfere with it." Andromeda sighed regretfully, "No wonder. It all makes sense now. No wonder they couldn't find it for all this while. Turns out, they were hiding in that country. It also explains why they couldn't find anything about Axel's parents' past. Axel was an Atlantean. But, that's not what's important right now." Andromeda's looked at Bellatrix seriously. "Bella, if this is indeed the case, then it is going to be much more difficult than a simple revenge. The organization is dangerous. You can't take any rash actions." Bellatrix took a sip of her wine, "I know." Bam! At this moment, the door was flung open, as if someone had kicked it, and the two alarmed women heard a familiar voice, "I'm back, bitches." X2 Bellatrix and Andromeda remained motionless as the intruder made their way into the kitchen. "Blimey. I've always wanted to do that," said Nymphadora Tonks as she grinned at the two women. "Nymphadora?" Andromeda whispered in a daze. Andromeda was still surprised while Bellatrix was exasperated at the dramatic entry. "Did you catch the Black Madness while you were away, Nymphadora?" asked Bellatrix, not the least bit surprised by her arrival. She just wanted to give her sister a surprise. Nymphadora's grin turned into a pout. "Black Madness. That's rich coming from you, Auntie Bella. And when will you stop calling me by that name?" she said even as she made her way to her mother, who had already abandoned the cooking to hug her daughter. "How come you're back?" asked Andromeda, hugging Nymphadora tightly. Her daughter has been on Auror training for more than 1.5 years. It lasts for around 3 years and the trainees aren't allowed to leave before that. Calls are allowed, but it's been a long time since the mother and daughter saw each other in person. It's all thanks to Auntie Bellatrix. Since Hogwarts needs a lot of security and manpower right now, they've also decided to discharge some trainees to let them get some experience. It's part of the training. While hugging Nymphadora, Andromeda looked gratefully at her sister. Bellatrix just shrugged. Don't look at me like that. There was just a shortage in manpower. Ah, Auntie Bella is such a big softie, said Nymphadora as she dragged Bellatrix into the hug as well, turning into a 3-way hug. After the 3 women had hugged her enough, Bellatrix coughed, listen up now. There's a personal mission I'm giving you. AN title. Arrival POWSTONES. You can read ahead and support me here. Patreon.com/snollygoster. Leave a vote or comment. Chapter 57. Arrival. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The night before the arrival of the delegation. Not long after the dinner was over, while everyone was still excited due to Dumbledore's announcements, Axel silently got up and left after eating his fill. Axel. Someone called him out as soon as he left the Great Hall. A sigh escaped his mouth when he recognized the voice. What is it? He asked, even though he already knew exactly what it was. Patricia stood behind him with a somewhat unnatural expression. Her breathing was rugged and her face was flushed. I really want to win now. Anything. I'll give you anything. Please join the team. She pleaded. Axel thought about it. Even after he took Daphne's advice, he hasn't given her a definite answer during these days. It's just one of those things you entertain the idea of doing but never really act on it. Even at this moment, Axel was still thinking whether he should go for it or not. So. Will you give it a try? You don't even have to waste for time in training or anything. I already researched, you can fly decently. You just have to show up at match. Patricia desperately continued pitching. What to do? Wondered Axel. It was a tough choice since his life might be in danger. But suddenly, Axel snapped out of his thoughts. What the heck is he doing? Since when has he been so indecisive? Wasn't it all clear? He wants the organization and he wants to do the mission. Then why hesitate? If he has to do it, he'll do it, and kick ass while doing it. If he can't even handle the organization, is he supposed to just roll over and die when Voldemort conquers this world? Alright. And I'll even handle if anyone tried to bother. What did you say? Patricia paused in her pitching as soon as she heard him. I said I'm in, Captain, said Axel decisively. Patricia's face lit up with joy. She was so happy that she rushed up to hug Axel. But, she hugged nothing but empty air as Axel suddenly disappeared and appeared a meter away. Not every time, he muttered with his back to her, already walking away. He was already somewhat used to these girls' attack called hug. Not just any random girl can trap him. Hogwarts. With a shout and pinch of Flo powder, Nymphadora Tonks arrived at Hogwarts Flo Station. How things have changed. She muttered, looking at the Flo Station. She still remembers the time it was being built. It used to be a boys' toilet near the Quidditch pitch before that. But now, the Quidditch pitch has turned into a Quidditch stadium and this thing has transformed from a boys' toilet to a Flo Station. Whoosh, whoosh. The other Aurors had arrived while she was looking around. Frank Longbottom, Kingsley Shacklebolt, Hestia Jones, and around a dozen others. Blimey, things have been changing too fast, muttered one of the Aurors. Well, it's still quite similar. Observed Tonks. They didn't even have to change it much. Just had to replace the urinals with a fireplace. Otherwise, it looks the same. The other Auror agreed to her statement, but he seemed to have missed an important point here. And how in the Merlin's pants, do you know how this boy's toilet used to look like? Asked Hestia Jones, Nymphodora's friend and fellow Auror trainee, emphasizing the word boys. Nymphadora grinned. Well, let's just say that being a metamorphmagus has its perks, she said with a wink. Hestia had to take a few seconds to digest that. So, you can actually grow a pair, she said, and the two of them burst out laughing. Some other Aurors who were listening in on the conversation also had to suppress their sniggers. Enough, said Frank Longbottom, making the Aurors flinch. Don't forget that the two of you are on active duty. Yes, boss, replied Tonks, once again cursing the involvement of Frank. This man was the head of magical law enforcement, and more importantly, he was very strict and a pain in the ass. She was glad he was here only for today to welcome the delegation. They were currently under Kingsley Shacklebolt. Aurors, listen up, said Shacklebolt, gathering everyone's attention. He then began briefing them on their duties. Someone was supposed to keep a lookout on the wards, someone was supposed to patrol the castle, someone was supposed to keep an eye on the students and prevent any major disputes from happening, etc. Trainee Tonks. Yes, sir. It has been speculated by the headmaster at the girl who lived is going to be targeted during this time. Your mission is to guard her 24/7. Is that clear? Wow, I mean yes, sir. Tonks couldn't help but grin. She can spend her time chilling with her cute cousin Rose. Frank frowned. She's just a trainee. I don't think she can handle high-level threats, he stated, questioning Kingsley's decision. Well. The Aurors exchanged glances. None could really blame Frank. After all, how would he know? That behind this cute and ditzy facade, was a monster personally trained by the minister. By the next day, the news of Axel joining the Slytherin team as a seeker had already spread far and wide at Hogwarts. And people had quite different opinions on it. He's just a cripple. There's no way he can be a seeker, was Draco Malfoy's opinion, who was still woefully unaware and wrong at many levels. He was enraged. He's going to destroy them, was what Daphne was thinking. It seems like she'll be supporting the Slytherin team this year. But still, she was worried. Why did agree? It's not something he would do. Was it? Because of that beautiful captain of Slytherin. Why would he do this? Was what Rose wondered as she sat at the Gryffindor table for lunch. Why indeed would he do this? It was understandable if it was something like dueling, but isn't playing Quidditch quite hopeless for him? As a seeker herself, she didn't feel right playing against him. Neville, who was quite proud to see both his father and mother sitting at the professor's table, simply scoffed. I bet it's because I taunted him last time. He couldn't accept the fact that he'll never beat you at Quidditch. Meanwhile, Nymphadora, who was sitting with Rose, looked at the Slytherin table curiously. Which one is he? Who was this guy for whom Auntie Bella and Mom are so concerned about? Rose didn't even have to look over, corner of the table from left. Damn, muttered Tonks as soon as she saw him. She then looked at Rose in a new light. So, you hate him? Rose nodded. You have no idea. Hate can't even cover half of it. Nymphadora grinned as she shook her head. Sweet Merlin, is this what I think it is? Oh. Why exactly is he annoying? She asked Rose. That. Because. He's such an idiot. Why is he even trying when he knows he can't win? And there are so many other reasons. Is that so? Rose grew annoyed. Yeah. And what's with that shit-eating grin of yours? Tonks' grin widened as it stretched up to her ears, literally, just to troll her ickle little Rosie. Metamorphing for win, nothing. Blimey, isn't it hot in here? The portal opened, and an old man wearing a yukata stepped through, his eyes appearing almost closed. This was Yamasaki Hiroshi, the principal of Mahutakoro School of Ninshu and Jutsu. The man had a walking stick in his hand even though he walked in an upright manner. His head was bald, and his eyebrows, beard and mustache were white and long. Behind him came the teachers and students of Mahutakoro. While the headmaster looked quite harmless and peaceful, these people gave out strong and intimidating vibes as they looked around curiously. Unlike Hogwarts students who were wearing long-ass impractical robes, these people were wearing clothes that were easy to move in, and each of them had a forehead protector which was carved with a symbol that signifies their specialization. Fire, water, wind, and earth. Yamazaki. Dumbledore. Dumbledore greeted Yamazaki Hiroshi familiarly while the other students and teachers of Mahutakoro looked around curiously. When they looked at the students, their eyes showed traces of disdain. This somewhat guaranteed that the upcoming months weren't going to be as peaceful as some would have liked. "You've grown old, Dumbledore. I no longer see that fire," said Yamazaki, tapping his cane on the ground. Dumbledore smiled. "I can say the same for you, my friend. The you of 40 years ago would have already bombarded me a few times. Then, let me see if you still have it in you," said Yamazaki before his hands formed a series of hand signs and his face turned up towards the sky. In the next moment, flames erupted from his mouth, forming a giant dragon as they reached high enough. Dumbledore sighed. "I'm too old for this, my friend." He pointed his wand at the giant dragon. Even though he said this, both the old fogies knew that this was the right move. Both sides needed to show the students what the other side had to offer. Now, there were many ways Dumbledore could have dealt with this, but to dispel the Mahutakoro's disdain and condescension, he had to make a demonstration. A flaming phoenix burst out from the elder wand and went toe-to-toe/talon-to-claw with the giant dragon. Boom! Holy shit! Bollocks! Is this the power of? The students looked the giant dragon and phoenix fighting it out in awe. On the other hand, Axel was trembling with excitement. Arcane eyes, true invisibility, presence reduction, blend, fuck. He had opened his arcane eyes just in time when the old fogey had warned Dumbledore of his attack. And the results were exciting. These two are really monsters, he thought, looking up at the sky. He has a long way ahead of him if he has to match that one day. Compared to Voldemort, who is supposed to be even stronger than this, he'd prefer whoever the organization sends who would underestimate him as a 12-year-old, magic hands. That being said, he has to improve fast in order to survive. His hands quickly formed a series of symbols, trying to exactly copy what he'd seen just now. Ding, you have unlocked. A laugh along with a small burst of flame escaped his mouth. This year is going to be interesting. Organization Headquarters. Atlantis. In an unknown location, a group of individuals sat at a high table as they gazed down at a bespectacled man who was reporting to them with his head bowed. And the king's poor health hasn't improved. The fight for succession is starting to get intense. Good, said one of the men sitting at the high table while some nodded in agreement. This was good development as it was in line with their plans. Without any proper heir to the throne, they have a good chance of taking over. Next. The bespectacled man looked at the report in his hand. The magical schools of Britain and Japan are holding a type of joint education program. We're suspecting that the Britain's ministry is trying to get Japan's manpower on their side behind the scenes. The leaders discussed this matter among themselves. Usually, it wouldn't have been any of their business, but Britain's ministry seems to have a vendetta against them. After some discussion, they came to a conclusion. Keep an eye on their movements and report everything to us. Anything else? The man hesitated, but then tentatively affirmed, it concerns the traitor. This got a reaction out of the members. The mention of anything related to the traitor was all but forbidden in the organization. The atmosphere of the room seemed to have turned gloomy just by the mere mention of this person. And for good reason. So many years of research, so many years of planning. And when they were about to succeed, a trusted member betrays them and destroys everything. Due to him, now they have to take such drastic measures. What is it? Don't tell me he has returned. The key was clearly destroyed before they disappeared. The man shook his head, no, but we have discovered that. Before running away to chase after that man, the princess was actually pregnant. Everyone present was taken aback as they realized the implications of that statement. When the two of them had returned to stop the organization's plans, the woman was clearly no longer pregnant. This can only mean two things. The princess either had a miscarriage, or AN title. Axel, the OP Ninja. Read ahead on Patreon. Patreon.com/snollygoster. Chapter 58. Elemental Affinity. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hahaha, arg. Damn. Axel accidentally charred his mouth a bit in the excitement. Thankfully, his intent just now was non-existent and he hadn't used any incantation either. So, only a little amount of flames were produced which went out unnoticed since everyone was looking at the spectacle in the sky. Man, I got too excited, he muttered, drinking some water. He was so eager to try it out that he forewent the safety precautions. Magic hands. Proficiency. 15%. 16%, you have unlocked. Fire affinity. Current affinity. 4%, damn. What the heck is this? After the flames of the dragon and phoenix faded, everyone applauded. May we have a happy cooperation, said Dumbledore with a smile as he shook hands with Yamazaki Hiroshi, the foreign principal. Everyone went to the great hall with the foreigners still looking around curiously. The senseis sat at the head table while the Neens were allowed to sit wherever they liked. Here. Come to Gryffindor. No. Hufflepuff. You're welcome at Ravenclaw. Slytherin. The students began clamoring to invite the foreigners to their tables. At this moment, most of the Neens split into two groups. One group seemed to follow a tall, handsome boy with spiky black hair and playful temperament. His forehead protector had a wind symbol on it. The other group followed a girl with auburn hair. She had a cute, serious face but a voluptuous body. The girl went to the Gryffindor table to sit beside Rose Potter with the group following her also going to the Gryffindor table. The guy on the other hand, went to the Ravenclaw table right up to Martina. Can I sit here? Martina turned her head to look at the guy who was asking for her permission to sit. Even though she was slightly uncomfortable, she just gave a single nod. This wasn't the first time people were bothering her and it won't be the last. She just went back to reading the book she had opened in her magi. Mirror. I'm Endo Yuji. Pleased to make your acquaintance. Martina nodded. I'm Martina Valentino. Just like how everyone at Hogwarts was given an English to Japanese amulet, everyone from Mahudakoro was given a Japanese to English amulet, so there was no problem in communication. The guy nodded eagerly. Yeah, I've heard a lot about you. You're that genius who's invented a bunch of things, right? Oh, another fan. Martina nodded. So, what are you reading right now? Which subject is it? I might not even understand it but I'm still curious, asked Endo with a smile. Martina looked back at the guy in bewilderment. It's a fantasy novel. Right, can't genius simply read fantasy novels? At this moment, someone else spoke up, Endo Yuji, right. I've heard about you. You've played Quidditch in major leagues, right? Yeah. After that, Endo was forcefully engaged in various conversations with other Ravenclaws, not giving him a chance to disturb Martina further. The girl was strongly treasured/guarded/worshipped by the Ravens. After everyone was seated, Dumbledore went to the podium. I'd like to begin by offering a very earnest welcome to our guests from Mahudakoro. I wish you have an enlightening, educative, and salubrious stay. There was a sound applause for that, after which he continued, Hogwarts and Mahudakoro are two of the best magical schools in the world. But, what's more interesting is that, the teaching methods of both the schools vastly differ from one another. Both the schools produces elites, but they have their weaknesses. The students from Hogwarts can't compete with Mahudakoro in combat, stealth, physical magic and so on, while the students from Mahudakoro can't compete with Hogwarts in the fields like enchanting, transfiguration, charms, etc. So, when Principal Yamazaki here and I happened to be in contact with each other after a long time, we thought, why not combine our strength, and produce elites who have no weaknesses? And that, my dear students, is how this cooperation came to be. From now on, the curriculum of both the schools will have slight changes, with new subjects being added to the mix. I hope you not waste this opportunity and learn what is being taught with an open mind, he said, finishing his speech under the thunderous applause. Dishes then appeared on the table, this time with various Japanese dishes mixed in. Apart from a certain someone who was eating boiled tasteless meal, everyone else enjoyed the meal. While the welcoming feast began, the students were also given their new timetables, which made them gasp and even cause somewhat of a small commotion. The heck? It starts from 7 in the morning. Mate, stop messing around, I go to sleep at 5. Physical training. What do we need this for? Well, I have no problems with this. I'm quite fit due to Quidditch. But then it's a stealth class. Wonder what that'll entail. The most exciting is the hand seal magic class. Can you imagine? Wandless magic. But so many classes. How are we supposed to do this? After the feast was over, Dumbledore made several announcements to suit the students. Since the number of classes have increased, you are hereby absolved of a majority of the grueling homework that takes up most of your time. I hope you enjoy this year. Cheers! The students burst into cheers, some even raising their hands up in bonsai. Sitting in the nondescript corner away from everyone's gaze, Axel also smirked, so, even they know that the homework they used to give was useless, he thought. He certainly hoped that was the case. Anyways, nothing changes for him, but Daphne should be happy, right? Fuck. Daphne was not happy. She had already done most of Axel's homework of this year, all of which is now useless. Also, it was already quite a small thing doing his homework, but now she has no way left to even slightly repay him for what he did for Astoria. Daphne felt very useless. The next day, since everyone was already going to come at 7, Axel went to the grounds at 5 o'clock in the morning for his own workout. He usually starts after 6:30, but now he has to adjust his timings. It was said that you could wear training clothes, tracks, or other clothes you were comfortable in. So, Axel came in his usual clothes that he wears during his training. After coming to the grounds, he found that there was an obstacle course of sorts built here. It must have been built yesterday night. Shrugging, he started his own training. After being healed, he has upped the ante with his training, trying out every grueling and intense exercise. The skills which he couldn't progress or unlock in the past have started to be unlocked and progress rapidly. He first ran laps around the ground at high speed. While running, he also took a few seconds to clear the obstacle course just for a proper warm-up. Then, he went to the Forbidden Forest to start the real training. With so many skills to master, he was only half finished by the time it was time for classes. So, after cleaning himself up, he went to see what this basic training was about. By the time he arrived, the grounds were filled with students. In the crowd, he found Daphne, who was looking around with her Magi.mirror in her hands. "Why aren't you picking up my calls?" she asked as soon as she saw him. "Well, it's usually off," he said, checking his Magi.mirror. When he looked back up again, he found that she was just looking at him in a daze. "You still haven't woken up?" he asked, waving a hand in front of her. Daphne snapped out of her daze as she averted her gaze from him. "No, it's not that. I've rarely seen you in different clothes, she said, her ears turning pink. Axel looked at himself. He was simply dressed in track pants, a sleeveless T-shirt and sneakers. Due to the heat from the earlier workout, he had taken off his jacket and simply hung over his shoulder. Oh. Well, I've also only seen you in school robes or dresses, said Axel with a shrug, not finding the problem. Daphne was sporting a T-shirt, tights, a jacket and trainers, looking quite spirited. In fact, everyone else was also dressed differently, but she wasn't looking at them at all. It's different when it's you. She murmured in a voice low enough that he couldn't hear it. Everyone. Just as Axel was about to ask her what she said, the professor who was supposed to teach them had arrived. He was a muscular guy wearing a bandana over his head. His forehead protector had an earth symbol on it. You can call me Yamato-sensei and I'm here to give you the basic physical training of being a ninja, he said in a loud, heavy voice. Ninjas try to make 100% use of their body. A capable ninja can kill a capable wizard without even using magic, he said with a bit of disdain, and Axel had to agree with the man's words. Axel himself can take on a few wizards without needing to use magic. So, it would be better if you guys don't slack off and take this seriously. Those not interested can leave this class after they defeat me in a duel where you can use everything while I can't use magic. That got a reaction from various students. Some seemed ready to challenge the guy there and then, but Yamato-sensei continued. The very first thing that comes under the physical training curriculum of Mahudokoro is physical training. Second, movement, your ability to move around. Third, stealth, and fourth, weapon, welding in hand-to-hand combat. I'll only be teaching you the first two. Is that clear? There was a lackluster response. Forming a hand seal, Yamato-sensei lifted one foot and slammed it back on the ground. Boom, the ground shook and everyone felt the tremors. You were supposed to say, yes sensei. Once again. Is everything clear? Yes sensei. Thus, the first class was spent running laps, which Axel had already done, and doing various exercises. In the remaining time, the sensei had a few students who still had a bit of energy left go through the obstacle course. The rest of the students were cheering for their favorites in the beginning, but in 5 minutes, everyone had given up, no one able to reach past the half point. Yamato-sensei smirked disdainfully, you guys have a long way to go. Do you guys know what the top Mahudokoro student's current best timing is? The students grew curious. Many of the students here were Quidditch players who had been working out for years. Considering that someone would be able to complete it, the timing shouldn't be low, right? 1 minute 10 seconds. What? The students were inevitably shocked to hear this. The gap between them seemed quite huge. Yamato-sensei clicked his tongue, does that seem impossible to you? Well, it should be. Unlike you guys, who live a pampered and easygoing life here, the ninjas at Mahudokoro are strictly trained from an early age under special conditions. Those who come from ninja clans begin training even early. Of course they'd be different. The gap is not something you surpass quickly. My job is make you aware of this difference, so that you know the difference and know that magic is not everything. Physical ability is also as important, he explained, making some students very motivated while some humiliated. Meanwhile, Axel, who had finished the obstacle course in a few seconds as a warm-up this morning. What a waste of time. Thankfully, the next class is hand seal magic class. He's sure to learn a lot there. Daphne, who was lying on the ground beside him, looked at him in bewilderment. The fuck, is wrong with you? You aren't, even slightly, winded? She asked while panting. Axel's brows furrowed looking at Daphne's condition. This won't do. Her physical fitness is quite low. Looks like he'll have to train her a little well. It's too easy for me, replied Axel. Daphne also felt so. He was doing everything all too easily. Then, why didn't you try going through the obstacle course? She asked. Axel shook his head. I'd gain nothing by doing that. He was even thinking of ways to quit this class. Maybe his cripple excuse would still work. But then, Yamato-sensei gave one important news to everyone, changing his mind. Listen up. From now on, you'll be treated the same as the ninjas training in Mahutakoro. In Mahutakoro, knowledge and techniques aren't taught indiscriminately. So, the techniques you can access will be based on your performance. Axel's ears perked up at that. Those who complete this course quicker will be rewarded with secret techniques you want to learn. The quicker you are, the higher the number of techniques you'll be taught. Of course, you are forbidden to teach them to anyone. Well, that changes things, doesn't it? Muttered Axel, a smirk forming on his lips. Looks like he'll have to come out of his crippled status soon. Isatra, the queen of dark elves, looked at the small kingdom they had relocated and rebuilt after Voldemort attacked most of their kingdom. This time, it was underwater, covered in a layer of magic that prevented any water from entering. How did you come up with this? Making a kingdom underwater? She asked Lily, who was waving her wand over a few mirrors in front of her. Lily shrugged. It's not my idea. Back in Mid-World, we have a city called Atlantis which is also built underwater. I got inspiration from there. Isatra got curious. Oh. How did it look? Was it beautiful? Well, I've heard it's beautiful, but I've never actually been able to visit that place since outsiders are banned from entering. I happen to be friends with the Princess of Atlantis though, when she and her lover were on the run. She was the one who told me about the mechanism. You knew the princess? Asked Isatra, tilting her head. Yeah. Actually, that's the couple who were generous enough to leave their research about Netherworld and Etherworld with me, said Lily nostalgically. The couple also had a baby whom they were going to leave with her at the Potter Cottage under Fidelius since they had urgent business. But then Voldemort attacked the Potter Cottage, cutting their contact forever. She still sometimes wonders what happened to that couple and their child. Isatra looked at the mirrors which Lily was working on. Is it done? It should be done. But are you sure they wouldn't betray us? Isatra nodded with certainty. I know they're rulers. They wouldn't betray us. Besides, most vampires and lichens wouldn't have submitted to Voldemort if they had choice. It's just that they didn't have a Lily Potter who could successfully help them escape. If we contact them, they'll definitely side with us. Lily was still uncertain. Even vampires. I mean, I had a werewolf friend and he was a good person, even though the werewolves of our world are different than your lichens. But vampires. They're just evil undeads on our world, said Lily. Isatra scoffed, the vampires a noble race. There are a few similarities, but don't compare them to your world's vampires. Well, as you say, said Lily, handing her the two-way mirrors. These things have always been handy, so of course she had learned how to make them. They plan on sending the other halves of these mirrors to the leaders of other races to establish stable contact. Since even the Dark Elves have also finally lost, they can only ally with the races now. I got busy with college stuff, hence the delay. Ninjutsu class and dueling POWSTONES. If you want to read ahead and support me, come to Patreon. Patreon.com/snollygoster. Thanks for the support so far. Vote. Chapter 59. Jutsu Class, Axel's Affinity. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 59. I uploaded the wrong chapter just now. This is the right one. While complaining and groaning, the students dragged their bodies back to the castle for bathing and breakfast. This physical training had a mixed reaction from the students. Some of them, who were fitness enthusiasts, were all too happy to show off their physical ability and improve themselves. But, a majority of students would agree that they'd rather sleep in their warm and comfy beds than toil away on the grounds like that. Though, some were simply happy to be able to see their crushes in something other than Hogwarts' bulky robes. For example, a photo of Martina in track suit quickly went viral on the forums with hundreds of students simping over it. A photo of Axel was also uploaded by a girl where he was doing push-ups and the muscles he had gained due to his training were showing due to his sleeveless T-shirt. The caption said, "Who is this cutie? Can someone give me his hooter?" A discussion had broken out in the comments section. Holy Morgana! My heart! Who is he? Look at those muscles. Oh Merlin! He looks like a prince. Isn't he the one who Martina picked? Really? Damn it. It was something like that. Most of the accounts on this forum are anonymous, so the girls had no shame drooling over a younger guy. And nonchalant from all the fuss, Axel had different thoughts in his head as he headed for the next class, the hand seal magic. After the last time, he hadn't bothered trying to do this magic on his own since he felt that it could be dangerous. Hence, he'd been waiting for this class ever since. The class was held in the huge dueling arena. The second years of all 4 houses were gathered, looking around curiously. Soon, their sensei arrived. It was a beautiful woman in a kimono whose age could not be determined by her appearance. She had a small beauty mark above her lips which were arched into a small smile. "Good morning and nice to meet you, little ones. I'm Sayako-sensei and I'll be teaching you a new way of doing magic, which is done by forming hand seals," she said with a gentle smile. "So pretty. She's beautiful." Sayako-sensei seemed used to the students' reaction as she began her class. "So, let's begin with the question, what are hand seals? They are specific actions, which aid in summoning and molding magic according to your will and performing a jutsu or a spell. There are quite a lot of hand seals in existence, but usually, only 12 hand seals are used in most jutsus. Rat, ox, tiger, hare, dragon, snake, earth, horse, ram, monkey, bird, dog, and boar," she said, her hands forming the 12 hand seals in quick succession, her each and every moment appearing perfectly smooth and clean. Her hands, thought Axel. They were very stable and dexterous. Perfect for stealing. Or for forming hand seals, I guess, he thought wryly. "Now, before we get started, there's one thing I'd like for you to test," said Sayako-sensei. "We have to check your elemental affinity." Elemental affinity? What the heck is that? I've heard about it. Sayako-sensei smiled at the students. "Yes, elemental affinity. Like all of you have your specialties in various fields, like transfiguration, charms, etc. Similarly, you have aptitudes for specific elements as well. You'll find yourself learning the techniques of these elements much faster than any other. But of course, you can learn techniques of other elements as well, though you'll have a much harder time mastering them." Saying so, she produced a transparent crystal from her waist pouch and put it on the table in front of her. "This crystal will tell you your affinities by lighting up in that color. The brighter the glow, the stronger the affinity. There are 4 affinities that are common in wizards. Fire, red, water, blue, wind, light green, and earth, brown. Aside from this there are other affinities which are much rarer to find. Some lucky people just have them while some are able to awaken them later. These rare affinities have some features that can be quite desirable under certain circumstances. Also, one person can have multiple affinities." Hearing this, everyone wondered if they'll be able to draw a rare affinity or if they'll have multiple affinities. After all, everyone thought that they were a main character, especially Draco Malfoy. Seeing this, Sayako-sensei's tone turned a bit strict. "But, you can awaken new affinities or strengthen your existing affinities through training. And the common affinities are no worse than the rare affinities if you strengthen them properly. So, don't be discouraged or too excited no matter what affinities you draw. Because in the long run, only hard work matters. Now, please form up a line and come one by one to check your elemental affinity." The excited students at once begin to scramble to be ahead in the line, even pushing one another. After all, this was like a lucky draw. Who knows if they'd get a rare affinity? Axel, on the other hand, had no real enthusiasm over this. He already knew his luck. If he seriously wants something, all the stars will align in order to prevent him from getting it. So, he's just decided he'll make do with whatever he gets. After all, the sensei has already mentioned that he can get other affinities and strengthen the existing ones through hard work. And in his view, if it can be done through hard work, it's easy. Besides, fire affinity. Unlocked proficiency. 4% is quite low. Everyone must have at least this much proficiency already, so it's no big deal. But the big deal is, he has also unlocked some knowledge on how to raise this proficiency. So theoretically, he should also be able to unlock the other affinities and increase their proficiencies. Just thinking about it makes him excited. While Axel was lost in thought, the students quickly realized that their fantasies weren't necessarily going to be fulfilled. For most students, the crystal just gave out a weak light of one of the 4 common elements. Only a few people had 2 elements, one of whom was Susan Bones. The other person was a guy who Axel didn't know, but the glow of crystal in his case was quite weak. The next was Neville, who had a strong brown glow, signifying earth. But, Sayako-sensei's eyes widened a little seeing something. You also have a bit of nature affinity. See the dark green specks. Though, it's a pity that it's too low, she said, disappointment clearly written all over her face. What is nature affinity? Asked Neville in confusion. The nature affinity was the affinity of the strongest ninja in history. It's incredibly rare. Even Mahudakoro has no one left with this affinity. Hearing that, Neville puffed out his chest. He couldn't wait to tell this to his dad. Even the students were impressed. Since Neville and Susan were done, the next one in their group was Rose. Everyone paid attention to what kind of affinity the girl who lived had. Frowning, Rose placed her hand on the crystal. At once, a red glow was emitted from the crystal, brightest of all of the students. Though, that's not what was surprising. What was surprising was the pitch-black color that dominated around 70% of the crystal. Congratulations. You have a very strong fire affinity, said Sayako-sensei with a stiff smile. Though even Rose could tell that something wasn't right, why is it black? Sayako-sensei shook her head and regained her composure, it's darkness affinity. It can be very powerful. That's all she said before calling out the next one. Aside from Axel, almost everyone else was fully focused on seeing the attributes of other students. Sometimes they even ed and ed at the results of some students. Though, there was one other person who did not seem interested. Damn it, these bitches. Motherfew *******. Axel frowned as he turned to look at Daphne, who was cursing while scrolling through her Magi. Mirror. What's up with you this time? Daphne sighed. It's nothing, she muttered as she looked at Axel's photo, which had gone viral with a lot of girls typing naughty and indecent comments. She couldn't care less about checking out other people's affinities right now. Can't these hungry bitches find someone else to lust after? Why did they have to come after Axel? Soon, it was Axel's turn and Daphne put away her phone as she thumped his back in encouragement. Good luck. Luck. That bitch has long forsaken me, thought Axel cynically as he put his hand on the crystal. Though his luck didn't seem too shabby this time, since as soon as he put his hand on the crystal, he felt a pull from the crystal and a brilliant blue light began to be emitted from it, making him squint. The light seemed strong enough to rival Rose's fire affinity. Water, thought Axel, looking at the blue glow. He couldn't quite figure out why he'd have water affinity though. He hated water because rain is the bane of homeless people and for thieves. The streets are empty and once you're soaked, chances are, you don't have another pair of clothes to change into. He still remembers the time it rained continuously for 3 days. It was a nightmare. Well, he'll get the other affinities through hard work. At least the other basic ones, since it was possible to learn them according to sensei. It would just be a bit difficult. Shrugging, he was about to remove his hand, but a hand pressed onto his own, preventing him from doing so. Sayako-sensei's reaction was quite different from his. Lightning. Lightning affinity. You have a lightning affinity along with water. See those sparks traveling through the crystal? That's a sign of lightning affinity. It was only then did he notice that. Blue sparks were traveling through the surface of the crystal. Damn, now that would make sense. He liked thunder. Though he was glad he didn't raise his other affinities yet, or he'd have drawn too much attention. Satisfied, he removed his hand and began to walk away. But he paused since a cerulean light was suddenly shining behind him, casting a shadow in front of him. Ice element. Congratulations, said Sayako-sensei, happily patting Daphne on the back. Daphne nodded calmly, still looking at the crystal, though. Why is more than half of it empty? She asked. Axel looked at the crystal, and sure enough, more than half of the crystal wasn't glowing at all. It just stayed transparent. Sayako-sensei shook her head helplessly as she knocked the crystal a few times. That, I also don't know. You really don't know anything else? Demanded Bellatrix Black, looking down at the man lying weakly on a chair. Minister Black, I've already told you everything. Do you really think I'd have anything left to hide after you've overdosed me with so much veritaserum? They were currently in a dimly lit cell and the man was bound by shackles. Bellatrix sighed, not about the organization. Tell me more about Tristan Hunt and this princess. I already told you. Tristan was a part of the organization. But he found out that the organization's actual goals weren't something that some of us would like to support. He had gotten dragged in because his late father was a member and he had no choice. As for the princess, I don't know much about her except that she was beautiful and her royal family bloodline was powerful. How that man managed to woo her, I have no idea. Bellatrix frowned. Once he had escaped, why did he go back? And what exactly happened? Well, he had only managed to steal the research and one key. The organization was going to use the other one, so he was going to come. He had this strong sense of justice. Couldn't see anything bad happening without interfering, said the man as he paused. There was a mockery in his voice, but there was also a hint of admiration. That's just like him, muttered Bellatrix helplessly, feeling bittersweet. Continue. She said in a sterner tone. So, he came back along with the princess. The two of them also stole the second key as well, but they were discovered and surrounded. Turns out, the higher-ups were waiting for him all along. The two of them were powerful, exceedingly so. But in the end, both were badly hurt. Tristan then cast a shield on the princess and destroyed the key. Then. What happened next? Asked Bellatrix anxiously. The man shook his head, the explosion was just too powerful. Both of them, along with a dozen members who were nearby, directly disappeared. Those further away either died with a mangled body or got seriously injured. I thanked the two of them for their sacrifice and finally managed to escape that place. There was a silence after that. After which Bellatrix sighed, You're quite different from the other member I caught. That man committed suicide as soon as I broke through his mental defenses, said Bellatrix with a sigh. The only thing she could find out from that person was that Tristan was dead. For so many years she had been obsessing over what exactly happened and if he suffered before he died. And now, she can finally get some closure. The man chuckled in amusement. Yes, Minister. I'm different. I had joined the organization purely for the research. I'm mentally and morally quite stable, if I do say so myself. But, you are also quite different from what I'd imagined, considering that you still haven't used the cruciatus or legilimency on me yet, said the man, feeling grateful. After all, the minister was infamous for her vicious means. Bellatrix's delicate eyebrows creased at the mention of that. Cruciatus and legilimency, you're just lucky that I no longer enjoy using them. She muttered as she turned to leave. Not after Axel, she thought. She no longer found it amusing to torture someone or break into their minds. It made her remember the pain Axel must have gone through, making her hate herself even more. Though, it would be alright if Axel cast those things on her for what she did in the past. Just as she was about to leave, the man called out to her. Minister, will I ever be allowed to leave? I haven't done anything wrong and I genuinely enjoy my job. Bellatrix looked back as she shrugged casually, maybe. Just be obedient and I might let you leave, Professor Jakub Gorski. ANMC with lightning affinity. Where did the water affinity come from? The answer should be easy. Dueling between schools. Power stones. If you want to read ahead and support me, come to Patreon Habibi. Patreon.com/snollygoster. Thanks for support. Chapter 60. Stay back after the class, you are listening at novelfull.audio. With everyone's elemental affinities determined, Sayako-sensei moved on to teaching exactly how to cast the jutsus. Casting a jutsu is not easy as casting magic. First, you need to memorize the hand seal pattern of that jutsu. Then, you've to perfectly form those hand seals, which is not as easy as it seems if you are transitioning in quick succession. A slight deviation can cause the jutsu to fail and result in serious damage to your body. Damn, thought Axel. It seems that he was right in not trying out more of that magic on his own. Your intent and visualization needs to be accurately projected as well. Lastly, do remember that you're not using a wand. So, even if you do everything perfectly, you will still need a lot of practice before you're able to summon the magic. With everything explained, the sensei started teaching the basic hand seals to the students one by one, even explaining the meaning of each. The hand seal patterns of each jutsu are quite long. If you want to shorten it to a few hand seals, you need to understand the functioning of each seal. This was the reason why they couldn't simply cram the hand seal pattern of any jutsu. After she'd explained everything, she had the students make each of the hand seals. First try forming ox. Like this. Now try ram. Like this. There was a big chart pasted on the wall with the illustration and description of each of the seal, and Sayako-sensei would just walked by each of the student who were standing in an orderly fashion with some distance between of them. At first, the students thought that it was an easy task, but after trying it out, they realized that it wasn't as easy as it looked. Your fingers are misplaced. It's too slack. Your hands are not stable. Sayako-sensei began to point out flaws in each of the students. Every student she passed by, she'd have to correct them. Horse. You're taking too much time. Ram. Tighten the grip. Bird. Wrong, it's like this. Meanwhile, standing at the back, Axel yawned. While the sensei had first shown the hand signs, he had already memorized and thoroughly practiced each of them. He was just waiting for all these other grunts to catch up so that the sensei can move on to the next stage. Though at this moment, since the sensei had reached his position during her rounds, he began to make the seals like the other students as well. But, when she was passing by Axel, the sensei suddenly stopped walking. Hare. Snake. His hands, she noticed as she called out another seal. They were perfect for killing, and for seals. Though, what was more surprising, was that the boy was perfectly forming the seals she was calling out. She couldn't find any fault at all. Sayako-sensei recalled that this was the kid with lightning affinity. Bird. Dog. Snake. Tiger, dragon, rat. Bird, dragon, ox, ram, tiger, bird, dog, boar, snake. Previously, she was deliberately taking a pause between each seal so that the series of seals doesn't accidentally result in magic casting. But, after observing Axel for a few seconds, she suddenly increased the pace, watching him intently. A pleasantly surprised expression appeared on her face when Axel perfectly executed the sequence without batting an eye. As a result, crackle small arcs of lightning began crackling around Axel's fingers, startling him. What the? His hands jerked at the unfamiliar sensation. Unlike when he was casting through the wand, the electricity was going through his own body instead. Ding, you have unlocked lightning affinity, current affinity. 57%, damn, thought Axel as he looked up, only to find Sayako-sensei looking at him in pure astonishment. You. Sayako-sensei was at a loss of words. Just now, she was so surprised at seeing him perform the spells that she inadvertently called out the hand seals of a lightning jutsu. It's just one of the things which you just try out while thinking, no way, right? But not only did the boy perfectly perform the hand seals, but he was also able to get results. This shouldn't be possible unless he's already had a lot of practice. What's your name, boya? Axel Hunt. Sayako-sensei smiled as she took Axel's hands in hers and dispelled the remainder of the lightning as she examined his hands. Calluses, cuts, scars, and hardened skin. As a veteran, she could tell that these hands have been through a lot. You have beautiful hands, Axel, she said, letting go. She had her doubts about why a Hogwarts student would have these and how he was able to execute the jutsu, but she decided not to disturb the class over it. Take 10 points to your house. You performed the hand seals perfectly, she said with a smile before moving on. Stay behind after the class, I need to ask you some things. The boys of the class felt envious of Axel. They were also trying very hard to impress the beautiful sensei, but all they got was criticism. Meanwhile, some of the students suddenly remembered something as well. Wait, weren't his hands? Rose looked at Axel's hands. It was only at this moment she realized that with his injured hands, he shouldn't be able to do these seals at all. So how come he's able to be the best at this as well? She had become so used to him being better than her that she'd completely forgotten about this. This guy, she clearly remembered Auntie Andromeda telling her to take care of him since he might never be able to recover. Has he recovered? She wondered, causing her to shudder. Just the thought of it gave her the chills for some reason. The rest of the class was spent with the sensei correcting others on the hand seals, though she still didn't teach them any jutsu, making Axel bored. Even though it was boring for Axel, Daphne seemed to be enjoying herself. Unlike the morning class's physical training, this was much easier for her. After the class was over, they were tasked to practice hand seals to perfection so that they could move on to the next stage. I'm waiting outside. Tell me what it is about, Kay. After the class was over, Daphne reluctantly left him since Sayako-sensei had asked him to wait after the class. As the last of the students trickled out, Sayako-sensei turned around to smile at him. Boya, answer truthfully. Have you received training in this magic before? Axel looked at her in bewilderment. No, how would I? Sayako-sensei seriously looked at him for a while and seemed to believe him. This complicates things. Axel frowned. What does that mean? Copy my movements, she said as her hands formed a series of hand seals. Frowning, Axel followed her movements, and as a ball of flames was formed in Sayako-sensei's hands, a flame the size of candlelight was generated in his hand as well. Sayako-sensei looked at Axel deeply. So, it really wasn't a coincidence. What does that mean? Sayako-sensei sighed as she explained. Hand seal jutsu is actually very difficult to learn. After all, there is a reason why wand magic is taught to our students despite having this. As I said earlier, even if a wizard is able to form hand seals perfectly, the magic will not necessarily be summoned if he's new to hand seal magic. Axel frowned. That wasn't the case for him, right? Yes, a normal wizard needs time and practice before their circuits are able to summon magic through hand signs. For the next few classes, your fellow classmates are going to be practicing basic hand seals and a basic jutsu. I'm just informing you to let you know that you won't be learning anything in the next few classes since you've already done it. I won't blame you if you choose not to attend. Hearing this, Axel frowned. It's not really a surprise that he's different. After all, his diet, training, and skills have made him quite unordinary. Plus, he's not even crippled anymore, so he's going to be the best at nearly everything. But, there was an issue. He looked at Sayako-sensei. Sensei, am I the only person who's different from others in this aspect? This was the main issue. If this was the case, then he's going to try his best to deny his earlier claim of not having received prior training. After all, it would be troublesome if others are curious, how? Well, there are excuses he give, like he found a scroll, or he was taught by an old man, etc. Thankfully, Sayako-sensei shook her head with a smile. It's not unprecedented. In fact, there are a few other students who were able to do this as well. Some are even monsters with multiple affinities. In Mahudakoro, these students can receive special training, if they desire, since attending normal classes is a waste of their talent. Special training. This appealed to Axel. Hand seal magic suits him quite well due to his talents. It would be good if he can learn as much as he can as fast as possible. Can I receive this special training? He asked. Sayako-sensei shook her head helplessly. It's difficult. We have limited teachers here at Hogwarts and you're not a student of Mahudakoro. And even if we ignore this fact, lightning affinity is quite rare. She said, making Axel shrug in disappointment. But, there's one person who can teach you. But, she'll only do it if she finds it interesting. There is someone. Who is it? Does this person also have the lightning affinity? Sensei gave him a mysterious smile. She's a student. But, her qualifications are enough to be a professor. As for her affinity, let's not talk about it. I'll ask her if she's interested, though don't have much hope. You can go now, your friend is waiting for you, she said, glancing mischievously towards the faraway entrance of the arena where Daphne was still peeking, unable to hear the conversation. Axel hesitated. Sensei, if possible, I don't want anyone to know about this, he said before leaving. This was all he could ask. And it won't be a big deal even if others knew though. After all, he was still holding back a lot while he performed this. Just like how he has to hold back to lower the output of his magic in other classes. He hadn't even used magic hands. As he came out, he found Daphne casually leaning against the wall outside, as if she wasn't peeking just a few moments ago. What was it about? Axel shrugged. Apparently, I'm too advanced, so I can skip a few classes. He said casually as they both headed for the Great Hall for lunch. Oh. That was it. Yeah. What do we have after this? Any more Mahudakoro classes? Asked Axel. He was finding these classes a bit interesting. Daphne shook her head. We only have normal classes left for today. The Mahudakoro classes will be tomorrow. Stealth, espionage and weapon welding, hand-to-hand combat. These ones. Axel frowned just hearing the subjects. He was still wondering what to do with these classes. For the stealth class, he could actually teach the sensei instead. But, he can't really show any of his skills or talents there, can he? Rumors of a thief are already circulating in Hogwarts after he stole everything Damien Malcolm owned. And if he shows off even a quarter of his stealth abilities, he might become a suspect. As for weapon welding, hand-to-hand combat, he doesn't want to show much of his combat ability since he wants the organization to underestimate him. When they come after him, if they underestimate him, they'll be much more rash in their attempts. After all, who would be cautious against a 12-year-old? Though, there is actually something to look forward to tonight as well, said Daphne. What is it? Daphne looked at him weirdly. You don't know? Nope. Sigh. Why am I not surprised? Anyways, a friendly exchange is going to happen here in this dueling arena tonight, just for the students to assess each other's dueling ability. Axel's eyes widened at that. For real. It seems like he should pay more attention to the happenings of the castle. If Daphne hadn't told him, he'd have missed it while doing his usual training. Daphne sighed, "So, are you going to participate?" Daphne had never seen the true extent of Axel's abilities. But ever since he's healed, she always gets this feeling that he'll be able to do anything. Axel seemed to think about it. No. It's troublesome. Daphne was relieved, but also puzzled, though. Isn't Quidditch also troublesome? Why did you participate in that? That is a different matter, Axel replied. Quidditch is much better alternative to attract attention. After all, the organization wouldn't be threatened if he can fly well on a broom and catch snitches. But it would be a different matter altogether if he's a duelist who can beat the best of both schools. Though, Daphne the pitiful girl was drawing different conclusions. Of course it's different. One has a beautiful and influential team captain who'd give in to your every demand while the other doesn't. What is it? Seeing Daphne deep in thought, Axel waved his hand in front of her. Daphne shook her head as she managed a smile. Nothing, I'll save you a seat tonight. That evening, Axel was so busy with his training that he forgot about the dueling exchange. After changing into a clean set of clothes, he decided that might as well go and take a look to see if it's still going on. After all, he was quite curious about the magic of these ninjas. Even as he ascended the stairs, he could tell that it wasn't over yet due to the noise of the crowd. When he finally reached the dueling arena, he found that the arena had been expanded due to the large audience and it was still completely full, with many students having to stand due to the lack of seats. A match was currently going on in the main circuit. Two boys were standing in the circuit. One of them was Cedric Diggory, the tall dark-haired boy with chiseled features, and the other one was Endo Yuji, the spiky hair guy with sharp eyes. Both the boys were quite handsome, hence the crowd's enthusiasm, especially the female audience. With his enhanced eyesight, Axel quickly spotted Daphne and made his way over. Pushing through a bunch of fangirls cheering for Cedric, he finally reached Daphne, who was distractedly looking at her Magi mirror. She had a few books piled on the seat beside her. When she looked up, she scowled. Why the fuck do you never pick up a call? Axel took out his Magi mirror to see a number of calls from her. I've told you. It usually stays in my pouch. Daphne sighed. She had been worried for nothing. She removed the books from the seat beside her. It was a pain in the ass, but I saved you a seat. Axel looked around. Sure enough, in this whole arena, there was maybe only one seat empty right now. There were many students currently standing around them as well. Thanks, he said, taking his seat. It really must have been quite a hassle to save. Daphne smiled. Anything. Her murmur was drowned in the cheers of audience. She had to come half an hour earlier than the start to get these seats. Right now, she felt that it was worth it. Pushing some bitches out of his way, Axel looked down at the circuit where the match was about to start. Professor Flitwick was the referee. Start. He squeaked, his wand ready to prevent any accidents. At once, Cedric fired a stunner at Endo. Endo jumped over spell while his hands quickly formed seals. Wind blades. Green blades of wind were fired at Cedric, who had to use a shield charm to protect himself. Bang! Bang! The crowd cheered as they felt the shockwaves of that clash. While Cedric was shielding, Endo had already sent a storm of wind at him, almost causing him to be blown away. But Cedric stuck one of his feet to the floor with the sticking charm as he sent blasting spells at the ground in front of Endo. Even while dodging, Endo was thrown off a bit, but his hands didn't stop making seals. This is enough. Be glad you forced me to use this. He stated with disdain as he suddenly turned into a green blur. Alarmed, Cedric tried firing spells at him but it was all in vain as he got a hard punch to his face in the next moment, the sound of which was barely audible even through the shouts of the crowd. Amidst the cheers of the Mahudakoro students, Endo looked provocatively at the Hogwarts students, as if asking if this was all they had. "Well, this is bad," said Daphne, a bit worried. Axel frowned. "What's wrong?" "These duels are being recorded and live-casted by several news agencies," she said, pointing at the reporters at the side. "Since the world is curious, they're going to get views worldwide. Hogwarts is going to look bad if we lose since this is not even their best duelist." Axel furrowed his eyebrows. For some reason, he couldn't bring himself to give a fuck. There was a pause in which several students hesitated to go and some even stood up. It's not like Hogwarts didn't have better wizards, it's just that they were a bit intimidated by that punch earlier and didn't want to be at the receiving end of it, if possible. Though, at this moment, someone from the crowd shouted. "Martina!" Martina, who was simply sitting in a far corner, peacefully spending her time analyzing the hand seal magic. "What did I do?" Before she had a chance to do anything, more voices began shouting her name, and soon, the whole of Hogwarts was cheering for her. "Martina! Martina! Martina!" And damn it, word count is already exceeding 3K. More fights in Power Stones. If you want to read ahead and support me on Patreon.com/Snollygoster. Thanks for support. Don't forget to vote.